Okay, I got the okay from our cable department, so we are ready to go live. So it is 7 o'clock. Deb, at your leisure, you go ahead and start the meeting.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to the April 21st, 2020 Planning Commission meeting. This is our first meeting conducted by video conferencing and not at City Hall. Due to the coronavirus pandemic, Governor Whitmer has issued Executive Orders 2020-15, 2020-21, and 2020-48, which suspend the provisions of the Open Meetings Act as they relate to public bodies meeting in person during this public health crisis. This executive order allows the Planning Commission to continue to move forward and carry out the important functions of our planning and development meeting agendas while maintaining a safe and healthy meeting environment for everyone involved. This meeting will look and definitely feel different than our typical meetings. So I'd like to explain to everyone how we will be proceeding. This meeting is being conducted using Zoom video conferencing software. Panelists for this meeting will include Planning Commission members, Sarah Roediger, Planning Department Director, Kristen Kapolansky, Planning Department Manager, Maureen Gentry, Planning Department Secretary, and Jason Bowden from the Engineering Department. Attendees will include applicants, any city department staff necessary for an agenda item, as well as members of the general public. Applicants will join the panel to present their agenda request for approval. Although panelists can be seen and heard, it is important for them to raise their hand and be recognized by the chair before they speak. If any member of the public would like to speak on a particular agenda item or during public comment, you will be recognized by calling into the Zoom meeting and using the ID number. Once you are on the call, press 9 to speak on the phone or raise your hand in the Zoom application. All comments and questions will be audio only and limited to 3 minutes per person. Each member of the public that wishes to speak on an item will be asked to state and spell their name and give their address for the record. Members of the public may also comment on an agenda item by sending an email to planning@rochesterhills.org. Ms. Gentry, will you take roll call, please?
Yes. Chairperson Brnabic.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Hooper.
Here.
Secretary Kaltsunas.
Here.
City Council Member and Commissioner Bowyer.
Here.
Commissioner Detloff.
Here.
Commissioner Gaber.
Here.
Commissioner Neubauer.
Here.
Commissioner Reese.
Mr. Reese is excused.
Commissioner Weaver.
Here.
We have a quorum. Move on to approval of the meeting minutes for February 18th, 2020 regular meeting. Are there any comments or corrections? Okay. I have a motion by Mr. Hooper, seconded by Mr. Detloff for approval of the meeting minutes. I'll take a roll call vote.
Hooper.
Yes.
Detloff.
Yes.
Kaltsunas.
Yes.
Neubauer.
Yes.
Bowyer.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
Gaber.
Yes.
Brnabic.
Yes, that motion passes unanimously. Move on to communications. I'd like to take a moment to thank Neil Schroeder for his service to our community on the Planning Commission. He truly was a very knowledgeable and valued member of our commission for many years. It was a pleasure to work with Neil, and he certainly will be missed. I would also like to welcome Marvie Neubauer as our newly appointed member to the Planning Commission. Hopefully we will be able to meet in person in the not too distant future. Public comment, Ms. Roediger, is there a speaker for public comment?
Not at this time. If anyone wishes to speak who is on the Zoom call, they need to raise their hand, and I do not see anyone raising their hand. If they're on a phone, they need to hit *9, And again, I don't see anyone at star 9. I have not heard from the auditorium at the podium if there's anyone physically in the auditorium. And Maureen, do you have any email correspondence for public comment?
I do not.
So at this time, we do not have any public comment.
Okay, then I will close public comment. Unfinished business. Request for preliminary plan unit development concept plan recommendation. City file number 18-021. Rochester Hills Research Park, a proposed campus addition to 5 buildings at the EEI Global site on 25 acres, located at 1400 South Livernois, south of Avon, Zone Rec W Regional Employment Center Workplace. Parcel number 15-21-276-013. Design Haas Architecture is the applicant.
Okay, and I just promoted 5 people on the applicant team. We have Peter Stuhlreiter, Derek Gentili, Joe Latosis, Greg Izzo, and Francesca Shovers as the applicant.
Hey, good evening, gentlemen. Ms. Kapolansky, will you do the staff report, please?
Yes. The applicant is proposing the development of a 5-building office campus at the existing EEI Global site. This is on the west side of Livernois, south of Avon. The campus includes 2 existing buildings. 1 would have an addition and 3 new buildings with an interconnected roadway system and pedestrian network. The property is zoned Rec W and an office campus is an anticipated use in that district. The applicant is proposing a PUD to facilitate the development of the property. As part of the proposed public benefit, the applicant has proposed 2 public connections to the Clinton River Trail, the details of which would be worked out in conjunction with input from the Friends of the Clinton River Trail, should this item make it to final PUD review and consideration. A food truck area is proposed near these connections, and open space has been provided throughout the site. The applicant will also be upgrading the proposed road connection between Rochester Industrial Drive and Horizon Court to create a formal intersection and a ring road looping around to Livernois. Lastly, this item was postponed at the February 2020 Planning Commission meeting for a number of reasons that I want to briefly address. The conditions included the following: that there shall be no trailers visible from Livernois. A note has been added to the plans, but should the commission wish, this could be addressed with on-site signage as part of the final PUD. There was also a condition to ensure that new development is not located closer to the trail than the existing pavement edge and that the view from the trail remains natural. The applicant has included a trail view as part of their supplemental submission, showing the proposed building 5 will not be easily visible from the trail. Trees and shrubs shall be installed in the 40-foot setback between building 5 and the property line. That was an additional condition. This can also be addressed on the final PUD. That the applicant should consider land-banked parking. The applicant will address this condition as part of their presentation. Another condition was to ensure that the initial phase includes the improvements at Horizon Court and Rochester Industrial and the road and landscape improvements at Livernois. This can also be clearly spelled out in the final PUD agreement should this move forward. And lastly, the applicant was asked to consider improvements on Livernois. Engineering staff have provided a memo outlining potential options, and the applicant can address their response to those options as part of their presentation. We also have Paul Shemenko here to answer any questions from the engineering department regarding traffic throughout the site or on Livernois, and Jason Bouton's here to address any stormwater utility questions. All staff reviews are recommending approval of the preliminary PUD, and that's all I have for you on this topic.
Thank you. Mr. Stuhlreiter, would you like to move forward with your comments or presentation?
We do have 2. Peter has 2 logins up. You were muted. Now it looks like you're good. Okay.
Okay. Is everybody, am I coming through?
We can hear you. There's no video, but there's audio.
Yeah, I have no video capability, but you have a screen share capacity, is that correct?
We weren't planning on using that this evening. No, we were just planning on having the presentation.
Okay. Well, Kristen put everything in a good summary, and you know, it's a 25-acre site zoned uh, zoned regional employment center, and we plan on adding several buildings to maximize the potential for this site and for this use. It's primarily meant for a high bay office combination for high-tech companies to gather in a complementary campus. Along with that campus comes reorganization of some streets, an industrial drive and Horizon Court into a more logical traffic pattern, which will help disperse the traffic. We think that after you've seen the project and you have the site plans and the renderings and some of the responses to what had been brought up in the past. I don't know if Kristen, you had a chance to forward on our comments from today, clarifying the 8 questions.
I did not. I was hoping you could go over those as part of your presentation.
Okay, I can do that. And I don't know if you want me to introduce the rest of the team first so that they can chime in, or should we just wait for them to raise their hand and then chime in at the time?
No, please do it. You're all promoted to panelists. You all can speak from your team. So you're all there to be able to chime in as needed.
They can jump in. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. The first comment was about the trucks visible that are there now, visible from Livernois, and we can comply with that and work with the city administration on the way to deal with that. It might be a regulation in the subdivision itself that disallows the park trailers to be visible. I think we have to be careful with the language about trucks visible from Livernois, because in a condition like this, there's going to be trucks visible from Livernois. They may not be parked and detached and visible, but there are some places where a truck is going to be visible based on the locations of loading bays, not only on building 1, but also on some of the other buildings. So I think that's just a careful kind of needle to be threaded during the process of final, whether it's signage or some sort of agreement. Number 2, I'm going to come back to and let Francesca address the landscaping within the existing vegetation. Number 3, the land banking. I think it's important to achieve this campus setting to have a significant amount of green space and pedestrian walkways. So what we did was use some parking calculations based on our own experience to establish the ratio of high bay and office parking ratios to arrive at the number that we're proposing. But we also do have additional green space for the project to be turned into probably right around 100 parking spaces if the situation should arise. I do need to say that the motivation from the developer for this project was the lack of high bay research and light industrial space. That said, we don't think we are seeking highly intense or dense office-only buildings. Those spaces are elsewhere in the community. This isn't that kind of space. So we don't think we're going to end up in that position where we need to add parking to accommodate a denser office-only community. But we do have the capacity to do that by eliminating our green space or parts of our green space sporadically around the site. There is a diagram that's out there, and I don't know if it's in your files, but you can see it. It's a site plan with some yellow markings where the cars can be, where the grass can be converted into more parking lot. Number 4, the S100 note, the initial phase to include road and major utilities. Yes, we agree with that. That's something that not only the phasing, but the sequencing of the project will be laid out in the PUD agreement. Difficult to provide graphically or in a list. Better to put that into the agreement. Every intention is to create the loop road with the utilities in it to advocate the incoming developments around the road itself. So that we can comply with number 4. Number 5 is about the architecture. Yes, we softened the architecture with brick and windows and punctured windows, some wood accents and things like that for the addition to building 2 and for building 4 and 5 and 3. And we think that it's a good look. It's natural, but it's still high tech. It fits the area. And we understand also on the developer side of things and on the end user side of things that if there are significant changes to their architecture, obviously those have to go through the approval process as well, as long as they can still comply with the PUD arrangements that are laid out in the agreement. I would assume that there are some other solutions for single user buildings to not look exactly like we have designed, but right now we're comfortable proposing the architectural qualities. Number 8 is about the parking. I'm sorry, about the additional improvements the city engineer had suggested. And although our traffic study indicates that the roads geometrically as constructed are viable and work, and so we're not 100% on board with providing these significant upgrades. So and just so that everybody understands the intersections, all these intersections have bypass lanes and dedicated right turn lanes, dedicated left turn lanes. So other than the lengths of some of these that don't meet the current criteria and the current geometries, our traffic analysis says that we're not going to cause traffic problems. Significantly discussing 3C in Paul's memo, we believe that 3C is more of a condition of an old standard being updated to a new standard along Livernois traveling north and south, which our development has nothing to do with causing the non-compliance. So it's a rather expensive undertaking for us. The other 2 are minor and also don't impact a lot of traffic if they're taken on in the future. So they wouldn't actually stop traffic at all to do the other 2, 3A and 3B. But at this point, we're standing in the position that the traffic analysis is valid and the roads won't be impacted negatively by this particular development. And I'm going to turn it over to Francesca for number 2 about the plantings.
Everyone can hear me? Good?
Yep, just talk up a little bit.
Okay.
Good.
Regarding the plantings that are in between the trail and building 5, because that building is the closest to the trail, what we have looked at are the existing trees. So there's 14 existing surveyed trees, ranging from 6 inch diameter to 24 inches. So there's quite a few that are quite large. The existing trees include cherries, box elder, cottonwood, elms. They're all in good to fair condition. The plantings that we're proposing, there's 11 trees that we're proposing. The proposed trees include amelanthus, crabapples, sugar maples, and ginkgo. We saw opportunities to work with the existing landscape and utilize the mature trees in the planting design. In other words, we use the areas where there's a bit of a gap to plant the proposed trees. And they're in those specific locations to kind of do it justice, to enhance the overall landscape of the area, and to create a better buffer for both the trail user and the site. There is in the illustration package on the very last page, there shows a view from the trail looking at where building 5 is supposed to be. Excuse me. Building 5 is quite hidden by the existing landscape today. and adding additional trees will just further mask it up. To show the exact location of where that picture was taken, if you look on page 3 of the illustration package, there's a yellow star, which shows where I stood and took the picture and made sure that it was right where building 5 is. I'm happy to address any questions about the landscape in that area, or in the overall landscape for the site.
Yeah, it's important to recognize that the trail in this location has a very thick buffer of thatch and undergrowth and an elevation change. So it's reasonably difficult to catch a good view of building 5, regardless of additional plantings.
Chairperson Bernabic, you're muted.
Are you finished, Mr. Stillreyer?
I am, and the whole team is ready to answer any questions or concerns.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Gentry, our email communications.
I did receive 2 emails today, dated today, one from Fred Phillips, the Vice President of the Friends of the Clinton River Trail, and one from Melinda Hill, the President of the Friends, with some questions about the proposed development along the trail. And these emails were forwarded to the commissioners prior to the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Roediger, is there any public comment for this item at this time?
At this time, I don't see any attendees raising their hand. So if there is anyone on the Zoom meeting that would like to speak, please raise your hand. Or if you're on a phone line, please hit *9 and I will allow you to speak. And I have not heard anything from the auditorium indicating that there's anyone that's physically here to speak. I will let you know if that changes, but as of right now, we do not have anyone indicating a desire to speak.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kalsunas.
Thank you, Chairperson Bernabic. First of all, I'd like to thank the applicant for coming back. You know, we missed the last meeting because everything's going on, but thank you for the renderings that were offered in the packet. I think it made a big difference. You know, how the buildings look like. I know you made some changes since then, but I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. I'm trying to put together verbiage of the motions. Ms. Kaplansky, from what I read, I'll call it the 5, 6 items or what have you that were mentioned previously were not noted in the packet, from what I could see.
Correct. The applicant has, tried to address those, but if there's conditions that you want to include, such as additional signage for parking along Livernois of trucks and things like that, you could add those to the motion as recommendations for council to consider including.
Okay, because what I'm seeing here is I was trying to follow along with the different items and checking to see if they were in the packet. And I added several, I'll call it, I guess, conditions to the motion. The first one is that the and then as applicant, if you guys could just let me know if you agree or not, because I really can't see you this way, but that the applicant works with staffs to plan an alternative location for trucks viewed from Livernois Road before final approval.
Yes, that's well worded. Yes.
Yeah, I want to leave it as a plan, work with staff, we could go from there.
Well, if I can, Nick, keep in mind that this is a preliminary PUD, so the final PUD plan does come back before you.
Okay, should we capture those 5 items or just leave them to the meeting minutes?
Well, if you want to make sure that they're addressed as conditions, feel free to add them, but
Yeah,
I just want to let you know that it's just not up to staff. It will come back before you.
Understood, but it will be something to present, and then this isn't for plan to approve, it just says that you work with staff. The next one I'd like to mention is that the applicant submit a plan for land-based parking before final approval. You mentioned that you had something inside your notes with yellow, but you thought that there may be some tweaks that you need to the plan, make to the plan beforehand. So we'll let you work on that. Are you guys okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. The next item is the applicant to put in a phase plan, a phase building plan in the PUD document that must include all infrastructure improvements in phase 1. Do you agree to that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'll look to add that condition if we make a motion today. Now, I guess I'll call it the elephant in the room based off of your opening comments, the traffic. The traffic questions. I have Mr. Shmenko's or Paul's letter here. And I guess, Paul, if you could, you have several recommendations. I saw some that are warranted and some that are not warranted. Can you go over this really quick so we could all sort of, I'm sort of confused if you could sort of be on the same page with what we're agreeing to and what we're not agreeing to?
Mr. Shemenko, you're muted.
All right. Yes, good evening. Yeah, so when this project originally came in, we reviewed it in conjunction with the Road Commission for Oakland County, primarily because Livernois is under their jurisdiction. And we utilized the traffic impact study requirements and methodology for determining any type of site improvements for roads or taper lanes and stuff like that. Based upon the traffic study, they weren't met to do full lane improvements. So, you know, the stuff that we required initially was the driveway entrance off the Rochester Industrial Drive that's further into the site. Some pedestrian signal improvements at Drexelgate and Livernois. However, the rest of the stuff that's, are the items that are referenced in items 3A, 3B, and 3C, those technically did not meet the warrants per the guidelines outlined by either MDOT or Road Commission. So the question was asked if, I think at the last meeting or previous discussion was, if there were any, considering that this is a PUD, if there's any type of amenities that could be included to maybe alleviate some concerns or potential traffic issues that weren't identified in the traffic study. Those were the three I kind of outlined and suggested as potential improvements. Two of them are fairly minor. I think the last one is probably the biggest, or actually the first one's minor, the other two are kind of equal in scale and scope. So just to provide some items that the Planning Commission could consider as part of, because it is a PUD process, it allows a little more latitude for staff in the city. So that's where those were generated or identified from that second discussion that was had. But technically, based upon the study that was provided, the traffic impact study, there weren't any major improvements that were warranted based upon that alone. So these were kind of just some ideas that I put together. If the Planning Commission wanted to pursue some amenities to add to or enhance the project.
Okay. So I guess my question to the applicants is based upon Paul's letter. How should we add to a motion about what we could add or not in regards to the parking?
Is that question to toss out to us?
Yes.
Well, I can tell you that on 3A, shaving off the nub of the dental office entrance is not a very big deal. We just you know, the improvements on the Horizon. I don't know. I don't know that the traffic counts. I don't think the traffic counts are going to justify that. And I mean, that's the way. That's what we're looking at. And there's an awful lot of infrastructure on this baby, and it's you know, it's the biggest number here. So we're trying to watch our P's and Q's a little bit. And by the way, the Horizon improvements are side curb road widening improvements. They're not they're expensive, but they're not hard to do. It's the Livernois project on 3C that's going to stop traffic.
But again, everything 3A, B, and C are not. They're sort of, they'll be nice to have. Have you agreed to 2A and 2B?
No, I think those were just suggestions that were kind of looked on as not conditional, not things that they're not things he was looking for us to do. So look at that again.
Is that true, Mr. Spanko? For 2?
Mr. Schmako, did you freeze? Are you still there? It looks like you might have froze. Looking at his memo, it looks like his memo number 2 talks about there's a lot of constraints on the site, and so I think the applicant's right that number 2 are things that why they're cost prohibitive, so why they couldn't be done on number 2.
Okay. So can I put together then a motion at the end that before final approval, the applicant provides a plan for traffic improvements proposed by staff as discussed at this meeting?
As long as it doesn't imply that the developer is agreeing to the items at this point.
No, this will be, the way it is that it would be to discuss it with staff so what comes into final so we know that it does not come off the table.
I think we need to hear what some other planning commissioners think as well on this item before we get too further down this path.
Okay, that's all I have, Chairperson Bernabik.
Thank you. Mr. Gaber.
Thank you. Good evening. And once again, I want to echo what Nick said. We appreciate this project and think it has all kinds of potential. The renderings were awesome, you know, and it certainly looks to be a beautiful project down the road. The conditions I wanted to follow up on, there were a few of them. Nick touched on some of them. With regard to the truck visibility, what I would do is I would recommend that we put something, you know, just make a condition of the PUD agreement. Take care of that. Maybe you put some type of a dimension that, you know, no truck trailer parking, you know, within X number of feet from Livernois, because I don't think signage is going to work. And if you just leave some ambiguous, you know, criteria in there, that's not going to work well either. So maybe we can accomplish that condition that way. Land bank parking, I think, is good. I agree with Nick on that, as well as the phased building plan with all the initial improvements and infrastructure part of phase 1. I mean, I'm assuming those are the improvements, the overall project improvements. Like, for example, you're not going to be putting in all the parking for building number 4 if you're not constructing building number 4 up front. But the general infrastructure for the project, that's what I'm assuming Nick meant by that condition. The traffic, you know, I was the one that brought this up before. I do think traffic is important there. I know what it's like going up and down Livernois in that area at various times of the day. And I personally think it's a mistake if we don't have certain improvements on Livernois. And I think the most significant improvements are in 3C. I just went down there again today and took a look at it. Basically, if you're coming northbound to Horizon Court, there may be 2 cars that can turn left before you stop traffic. That's it. And I think that when this is developed, when this road goes through, when this entire park is developed, the building that's going to be before us later tonight on industrial and some of the other facilities, I think that's a real risk of not having any improvements there. I wanted to ask Paul, I don't know if he's still accessible or not, but I wanted to ask him the question about, 3C, that those are improvements that should be done or shouldn't be done to meet RCOC requirements. I think what Peter said is that those are new requirements that would be required if this were being constructed from scratch today, but at the time these improvements were put in, that wasn't required. I'd just like some clarification on that point. A couple other factors that weren't brought up. I agree with the landscaping adjacent to the trail. I think that with those strategically placed trees, I think that's going to look and work very good from a trail standpoint. So I applaud that. On landscaping, I was wondering, I wanted to ask the applicant, can we put some landscaping in front of building number 4? I mean, that's a very plain office building that's going to kind of be at the very entrance of the site, the most focal point of the site. And if you look at the front facade, it's not broken up by anything. It's just a long, long facade that looks the same. There are no architectural features to break up the east-west expanse. So I was wondering if you could put, shrubs in front of there or something to break it up, to soften it, to give it more of a touch.
That shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, thank you. So Nick, I would maybe add that as a condition. I think that's building number 4.
Yeah, and I think you're referring to some ground plantings along the bottom and,
yeah,
6 or
just
8
something
feet
by
out.
the building to break up that, kind of monotonous, view of that building in front, because there's nothing, there are no vertical breaks in that at all. So something else to soften it up.
Yeah,
in terms of landscaping.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Couple other questions I wanted to ask that were, I guess, generated by virtue of those emails that came in today by friends of the Clinton River Trail. I don't know if the applicant saw those.
We did. We've received those, and we don't have a problem with working with them to develop a transition between the crushed asphalt and the concrete, and also clearing the underbrush for the 25-foot clear view angles. But I'd want to work with them because we don't want to disrupt things that they don't want disrupted. So we've decided amongst ourselves to transition the concrete surface to crushed asphalt at the property line, which is about halfway between the beginning of the connector walk to the trail.
Okay. So if that's the case, then the 2 biggest things that I saw them ask about were, number one, would it be, would Derek allow the public to park along that trail entrance, where the cars, I don't know, 8 spots or whatever, where there's parking right by that northerly entrance? And would that be possible and something agreeable to the applicant? That's one question. Then my second question would be the idea of giving an easement to the property to the south of you to connect up to that trail entrance on the south side of your property, which I thought was a real good idea, and it would obviate the need for another cut along that property.
Hey, Derek, you want to answer that?
So You know, we talked about in our last meeting that the issue with public parking becomes a general liability issue, and it opens up a pretty big can of worms. And where do you kind of stop that? And you know, I've told you guys I've been approached numerous times. I'm a community and civic advocate. I gladly help any of the charitable activities that go on the trail. I routinely let blood drives or cancer walks and those types of things that are happening. People contact me, and I'm glad to offer up our parking lot for a Saturday morning for something like that. But to turn it into a public, known public parking place, that can really open up a big can of worms. When we first bought the building, we had a problem, and I had to ask people to stop congregating there, and there were quite large numbers. I would be concerned about that, John.
Okay.
Again, I want to be friendly, and I want to be, support the community. And I know you guys have made a nice investment to the north of me where, there is a nice parking area there that accesses the trail. That's fairly convenient. I'm not sure I'm following you on the other request when you say this, the part of the property where you'd want an easement. I'm not sure where you're.
Yeah, you have a second connection to the trail at the very southwest corner of your property.
Okay.
Right. And the point that was raised is in front of us tonight is the development of the property immediately adjacent to you to the southwest as I can't remember, 65,000 square foot, office industrial type building. And what the thought was is just giving them, access to the trail via that cut right there that goes off of your property. So basically something, just some type of access right that, maybe their employees can use to get to the trail back there in that corner is what the thought was.
So it's to benefit their development, giving them their employees access to our trail access. That's what this is about. I guess I'm certainly glad to be friendly and neighborly, and I haven't seen what general development plans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, the key.
Talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, so that's something you would consider. Okay.
Sure.
If I can just jump in, I think as in the emails that we received today, the question is how many access points do you allow along the trail? And if you're requesting 2 accesses on your property, we have the next project that we'll be talking about later this evening has none. And so if there's an opportunity to have one that could be a joint, think of it as a joint driveway, if you will. It's a joint access point onto the trail so that each of you don't need your own individual accesses. Every access point, breaks up the natural.
Right, and I have no problem with doing the reverse too. We can eliminate ours if they want to, if it works better, location, whatever, and then they grant our employees the easement the other way. And we both developments have one access point versus me having 2.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe as we can talk about both projects this evening, maybe we make a condition that they work with staff and the neighboring property owners to figure out a location for one joint access for both projects.
That makes sense to me. We could do that and just keep it on the table for further discussion.
I'll take that down right now.
Okay, thanks. And then, that was basically all my comments, but I do think, that some of those road improvements are important. I do think that 3A and 3A, I think is minimal. I think 3C is important given the geometry out there right now of that road and the potential. Because remember, you're going from a potential of 150 cars a day on this site to 600 on this site. Plus, there's going to be the connection through of the 2 roads, Horizon to Industrial. So that would be my request for the applicant to seriously consider doing those improvements, and I would ask for that to be a condition of the motion.
And we do have Paul Shemenko back on the line now, so if he can maybe elaborate more about the 3C recommendations in terms of warranting versus kind of where the line is there.
I apologize for getting disconnected.
Commissioner Gaber, if you wanted to repeat your previous question about the road commission requirement.
Yeah, Paul, my question is I just want to clarify. You said in your memo that quote, improve the existing passing lanes to meet RCOC requirements. So how deficient are they now as compared to those requirements?
I don't have the exact dimensions, but I think, so in my memo, it says, for example, the right turn lane to be 150 feet and the tapering length to be 100 feet. I think they were off maybe like in total about 50 feet in length between the two, between the taper and the actual length.
So what would these improvements do to traffic flow in that area? Let me ask you that, just simply.
Well, I mean, in the end, what it would really amount to would be that someone would be able to, who's going, let's say southbound on Livernois, they would be able to enter into the decel lane a little sooner than they would with the current geometrics.
Well, but I'm mostly concerned about northbound, because that's where you have the deficiencies, both at the northerly entrance and then Horizon Court, because you've got enough room for about 2 cars to basically stack to turn left before you block traffic, because that passing lane at Horizon Court is very short.
Correct. Yeah, so that would improve that situation. The only thing I'm trying to recall when I look at the site, because I think you have some grade issues, because you have the passing lane, then a little bit to the east is when it starts sloping up for the existing pathway. So what I'm not 100% sure on is when you start extending that taper lane, that's going to impact the embankment in the existing pathway and maybe necessitate a need for a retaining wall.
Well, why would, I guess I'm trying to figure out, why would the pathway have to go further, or pardon me, the passing lane have to go further to the east? I mean, wouldn't it go further, extend further to the south? I mean, to me, that seems to be the issue. So that you can get around more cars that are stacked to turn left in Horizon Court. Isn't that the whole purpose of the passing lane?
Right. If you talk, just to be clear, you're talking northbound Livernois, correct?
Yep.
Right. Right. So right now, I'm trying to envision when the existing passing lane starts, if you were to extend that further to the south, I think it starts getting into some of the grade on the east, but I'd have to verify that for sure. But
I guess then I'd like this looked into further by staff, because I'd like to understand, because these, I mean, I do agree with the applicant that these, are not insignificant dollar amounts here. So I would like to understand what these improvements would do, what type of impact they would have on, on the traffic flow. And we really don't see that here. We see, I mean, you basically said, look, if you guys want to work with the applicant to get improvements that would somewhat help the situation, here's the laundry list of what you can consider. But I would like to understand the impacts of those, Paul, and how much or how little they could improve the situation out there, to understand if it's worth pursuing these improvements or not. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, and that's in reality, then the existing traffic study would probably have to be amended a little bit.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I think
The traffic study was done. What do you mean it would have to be amended?
To show the impacts of the
I mean, we had the traffic study done, right?
Yes.
We have the results of that. John's bringing up a different point that from you feel, because you drive the road, as do I, that maybe that you have a different opinion of what this will result in than what the traffic study is showing. I'm just trying to understand where you want to go with this now, John. I mean,
well, what I was looking for was Paul, as our traffic engineer, his opinion as to, what type of impact these improvements would have. I mean, obviously, what your traffic study said, Derek, is it doesn't recommend any improvements. There's a threshold. You're either over or under that threshold. What I'm trying to understand is what the difference would be with these improvements or without. Your traffic study, isn't by nature going to get into that. And so that's why I made the request to Paul, if he could give us some, idea of what the impact would be, of these improvements out there. I mean, I'm not trying to get, finite numbers set in stone, but I just like to have an idea from somebody, who does this for a living, who's a professional, versus me, who's somebody who just drives it and observes the situation, what the impact is. And it sounds like Paul's saying he can't do that. And Paul, I'd like to understand that better.
Well, I think I would have to get back with the probably road commission and the police and Vanderbeek to see the full, I guess what I'm saying is I would have to research that further.
I guess that would be my request. Give us further information on what the potential, I mean, I'm not trying to set it in stone, but just what the potential impact of these improvements could be to see whether it's justified or not justified.
Right, to see what kind of improvements. I guess you're looking kind of like a cost benefit ratio, sort of.
Right. I mean, if you're going to tell me that, having, extending the passing lane south on Livernois by, 50 feet or 75 feet is going to, have a big impact because you're likely to have more than 2 cars stacked there to turn left during busy times, then, that's something I can work with. But, I need some type of analysis from you on that.
Understood.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm done with my comments.
Thank you. Mr. Hooper.
Am I back on?
Yes, you are.
Okay, it doesn't show. It shows. Okay. Thank you, Chairperson Brnabic. Basically, everything that's been discussed and agreed to by the applicant, I have no problem with. And frankly, I love the project too. To be honest with you, absolutely love the project. I think it's a great improvement for the community, and it's a definite proven need for these large industrial buildings in our community. We're, as everyone's well aware of, we're very short on occupancy for them. The only issue I've got is, frankly, is this traffic study. And this consultant that you used, we've seen this consultant. I've been on Planning Commission for 20 years, and we've seen this consultant on several other projects. And the first thing I go to look at when they do the traffic study is background conditions versus future conditions. And if the study presented says you're going to make this improvement to a particular parcel and add significant traffic and parking, which here you're adding net 450 or 500 spaces on the project. And by doing that, the traffic improves from the background to the future. I discount this whole traffic study. No offense to anybody, but I've seen this before on other projects presented to Rochester Hills, and I just don't believe it. No way that you can add significant development to a project and the traffic improves. I just don't see it. I don't buy it. So I understand the warrants aren't met per the Road Commission standards, but I still think it's reasonable to make reasonable minor improvements to the traffic to improve the situation out there for what you're presenting to the project, and to make it, maybe a little bit plausible better for the community in general, and nothing extensive, or unreasonable for a development, but something that recognizes that you are making an improvement and there should be some additional traffic considerations for that. So whether that's 3A, B, and C, or a combination of that, again, I'm kind of, frankly, I'd prefer to have all 3A, B, and C. But if there's something else that Paul does his research and comes back and there's something else that's not needed, or is it's beyond reasonable. If we're talking about adding retaining walls on Livernois, I don't agree with that. That's not right. But if it's simply enclosing a ditch, adding a culvert, extending a passing lane north and south, I certainly think that's reasonable to improve an existing condition for a new development, not simply making an improvement to an existing condition with no change on the property itself. So with that, beyond that, love the project. I think it's great. And I'm supportive with some additional road considerations on Livernois. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weaver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilman Gaber kind of stole my thunder a little bit here, but I think these renderings are great. Landscape speaking, I think you guys have done a good job, especially the picture that kind of shows what it's going to look like along the trail. And I'm happy to hear that you guys are talking with the Friends of the Clinton River Trail there, specifically about the emails that they sent over today. I think a healthy dialogue with them could really help this move forward. The one additional question I had was in relation to the detention basin. Now, in the picture that you sent showing all that brush, does that extend beyond Building 5 and past the detention basin? Because I don't see any strategic plantings around the backside of the basin there.
The brush does extend beyond that what was shown in that picture.
Okay.
We've been going back and forth on pulling some of the landscape down on the side of the basin. We're happy to readjust some of it along that westerly edge.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a bit that we're providing there. So I think it definitely has room to be rearranged a bit to have some in front of that basin. That's not a problem if that's what you're asking for.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned with what it looks like from the parking lot, but just to make sure that we have that consistent natural look from the trail there looking into the property. But no, other than that, I agree that this is a good project. It's nice to see how far it's come, and I thought the renderings were really, really helpful. So that closes my comment.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Boyer.
Thank you, Chairperson Bernadette. Thank you so much for the color renderings. That beautiful project. Love everything about it. Thank you so much for doing the rendering of what the building would look like from the trail. That put my mind at ease at how it was going to look. And if you fill in some extra trees, that's a bonus. So thank you for doing that. I have to agree with Mr. Gaber on the access points for the trail. I mean, the big thing on the trail is you don't want a lot of access points, because if somebody's going down on a bike and then all of a sudden somebody comes out, 5 seconds later somebody else comes out. So we're trying to limit the access points on a trail just so that it, you have less access points is what's nicer. So if you can work with that other business entity to the south of you, that would be great. And I also have to agree with Mr. Hooper and Mr. Gaber on the, I travel on Livernois Road all the time. And if you're going to be adding a lot of employees and customers coming in, you're going to need to extend that left hand. If you're going north and you're turning into Horizon, or if you're going to turn in at Drexelgate, just to make those so you can stack a few more. Otherwise, they're going to be blocking all the traffic going north. And Livernois is already backs up all the time. So it's just going to add to the backup problem. So anything that can be done there would be great. Otherwise, I think the project is great. Thank you so much.
Mr. Detloff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for clarification and regarding number 3 in Paul's memo, I thought I heard Peter say that that was not a big deal and they essentially would agree to that. So more or less the things we're trying to hone in on is more, I think, C as I interpret this on that. Am I wrong in stating that they essentially do agree to do 3A?
Yeah, if I could, I mean, as I look at it, again, I'm there every day. Certainly 3A and more than likely a good portion of 3B, because it just makes sense for the site, you know, and as you're doing the road, you're gonna make it nice to enter, you know, the new entrance to the property off Dresselgate and what's newly developed as a part of Horizon Court. We would want that ingress and egress into the property to work properly and look right and function properly. I think the left turn lane and obviously the expense associated with that is a challenge. And I think I would ask you guys to consider when you meet with the other developer or adjacent neighbor, you know, that might, if it does become an issue, that's a requirement. I think that's something we're gonna have to look at, maybe sharing some of that expense, because it's probably gonna add more congestion if they do a development to what we're already planning. And maybe there's a way to help defer some of those costs.
So Nick, however that factors into your, you know, the wording of your condition on that, again, I'm hearing 3A, yes, and all of 3B or partial 3B.
Yeah, I think I talked to Peter and I said, let's take a serious look at that. You know, I'm sure we can probably do some improvements there. Again, with the amount of work that we're doing those extra cut-ins and making it clean and neat and connecting to Livernois properly is the right thing to do. When you get into rebuilding the road itself and adding significant lanes and getting into all those issues, I think that's a bigger issue for the county or for the city or for the other people that are involved in developing the adjacent properties. I mean, the community continues to grow. We're bringing a lot of people in, and not just from our development, but you know, since I've been here in 10 years, the amount of traffic has increased. People are using Livernois as a main thoroughfare to get north and south.
Yeah, Livernois is becoming like Tinkin Road, and that it's yeah, the traffic congestion during certain times of the day is really difficult. But anyway, thank you for the project. I agree with, you know, all the everything that's been said related to, you know, what you've provided tonight. So it's just 3C. I think that needs to, obviously we need further clarification, and Paul, whatever you need to do, you know, so we can move this thing forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Kalsunas.
Thank you, Chairperson Bernabic. I would like to go over a lot of the conditions that we added today, and then after that propose a motion. So we talked about a lot of them for traffic. I added a few from the conversation that we had today. Before final approval, the applicant provides a plan for traffic improvements provided to staff as discussed at today's meeting. That would include 3A and 3B. Is the applicant fine with that?
Yes.
And I guess with that one, I think staff also needs to go back and relook at the traffic studies. And there was a couple of questions, I guess, that came up today, Paul and Sarah. So as a courtesy to the applicant, if we could relook at those numbers. On this subject, I also do agree with Mr. Hooper and his comments. I've been on this board since '02, and I've yet to see a traffic study that has come back positive, not against the developer that paid for it. So we have to be very careful with that, but I think we'll see how this goes with this motion today. The other motion I have here that the applicant revise its tree plan and add more trees before building number 4. Is that fine?
I think that comment had to do with some softening of the ground plantings, which technically are
break up the building.
Yeah, I don't know if it's so much trees.
Maybe instead of trees, could it say add additional landscape materials so we're not limited to just trees?
Mr. Gaber, is that fine? Okay,
yeah, I think that's fine, because we're talking about stuff lower on the ground to break it up in the front of the building, not just trees.
So to add more landscape material. Got it. The next item I have is regards to the trail. This might be a little bit redundant. The applicant submitted a plan before final approval of a revised transition from the trail to the property. The commission requests that the applicants work with staff to supply an alternative plan / transition between this development and its neighbor to limit the amount of access points to the trail. I would also recommend, as we discussed, that you work with the Clinton River Trail group, but I don't know if this should be in this, motion or not, or you could work with staff on this. I think the staff could use from the record the commission's intent to work with the Clinton River Trail group for their recommendations. Let the staff know.
That'll be part of our final review anyway.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's all that I have. If it pleases the chair, I'd like to move the motion in the packet.
Yes.
In the matter of city file number 18-021, Rochester Hills Research Park PUD. The Planning Commission recommends the City Council approves the PUD concept plans dated and received March 11, 2020, with the following 7 pre-printed findings, 7 pre-printed conditions, and the added conditions, figure out my paperwork, that the applicant work with staff to plan a minimum distance to Livernois Road, location for trucks that could potentially be viewed from Livernois. That this plan be submitted before final approval. The applicant submit a plan for a land bank parking before final approval. Next one, that the applicant put in a phasing building plan in the PUD document. This plan must include that all infrastructure improvements be included in phase 1. The next one, before final approval, the applicant provides a plan for traffic improvements provided or proposed by staff as discussed in this meeting that includes the items number 3A and 3B per Paul Shemenko's letter dated March 9th, 2020. Next, that the applicant revises the plan to add more landscape material in front of building 4. The final condition that the applicant submit a plan before final approval of a revised transition of the trail to the Clinton River Trail to the property. The commission recommends that the applicant work with staff to supply an alternative entrance and transition between the development and its neighbor to limit the amount of access points to the trail. That's my motion.
And Mr. Kalsunas, I don't think I heard about the Western Edge landscape basin. That we're going to add additional landscaping in that area.
Okay, can I add that to the last item, or just make another condition?
Whatever you prefer.
Okay, so we'll put one that the plan be revised to it was extra plantings to it, right?
Yes, per Mr. Weaver's request.
Okay. Mr. Weaver's request to add landscaping to the west side of the retention pond, I believe it was, so that the plan be revised and those items be submitted before final approval.
So we have 7 additional conditions, correct? We had 7 pre-printed, and an additional 7, so we have a total of 14, is that correct?
6, 7, yep. 14.
Do I have a second? Okay, Mr. Hooper?
With one discussion point, I guess. I'll second it with one discussion.
Okay.
On the, and we could do this under final PUD, but besides the traffic improvements of 3A, 3B would be further review and consideration of 3C after analysis of staff.
Is that fine to the applicant?
Sure.
Okay. I'd like to make that change to my motion. The 3A, 3B, as well as further review and discussion with staff of 3C. For the letter, da 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 da.
Okay. Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Kalsunas, seconded by Mr. Hooper to recommend the preliminary PUD plan approval with the 7 pre-printed findings, 7 pre-printed conditions, and 7 additional conditions for a total of 14. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, a roll call vote, please, Ms. Gentry.
Kaltsunis,
Yes.
Hooper,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Detloff,
Yes.
Boyer,
Yes.
Gaber,
Yes.
Newbauer,
Yes.
Vernabik.
Yes. That motion passes unanimously. And congratulations to the applicants on moving forward with their plan.
Thanks for your
Looking forward
investment, Julie.
Yes,
Thank
and
you.
just for the applicant, just so we know, I think we're trying to get you on the May 4th council meeting. So Kristen and Mo will be in touch with you to follow up for the May 4th city council meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll move forward with new business. Request for a tree removal permit, city file number 19-047 for the removal and replacement of as many as 1 regulated tree for Tinkin Trail Offs, a proposed 12-unit townhouse development on 0.785 acre on the north side of Tinkin, west of Rochester, Zone 01, office business, with an FB flexible business overlay. Parcel number 15-03-451-031. Roger Barant is the applicant. This agenda item also includes site plan approval. So good evening to the applicants. Will you introduce yourself for the record, please?
The applicants are all muted at this point.
Sorry.
Oh, can you unmute them? There we go.
Yes, Roger Barant Architects, 6435 Apple Orchard Lane, Rochester Hills, Michigan, 48306.
Thank you. And you have 2 additional people with you here today?
Yeah, John McCann and Luke Beach, it looks like, are here. They're partners with me in the development project.
Yes, and just so you know, Roger, I do not see your 4th team member on the attendee list. So if I see a Steve Dumont, I will promote him, but I do not see him at this time.
Okay, that sounds good.
Ms. Roediger, staff report, please.
I'll turn it over to.
I'm sorry, Ms. Kapelansky, wrong person.
Oh, that's okay. The applicant's proposing to construct a 12-unit loft-style development. This would be in 3 separate multiple family buildings on the north side of Tinkin, just east of Cliffview. As was mentioned, the property is zoned 01 with the FB1 overlay. Multiple family dwellings are permitted in the FB overlay, so they will be using that to develop the property. An outdoor amenity space for residents is located in the rear portion of the property, and there's a small pedestrian refuge and bike workstation proposed along the Tinkin Road pathway. The plan is generally in compliance with ordinance requirements, but the applicant is requesting modifications from a few standards, as is allowable in the FB overlay. The principal entrance of Unit 5 faces Tinkin instead of the required side or rear yards. That's one modification. Off-street parking is located in the side yard instead of the required rear yard. Given the shape of the parcel, parking in the rear yard only would have severely limited the development on the site. Also, I just wanted to note the planning review should have noted that the applicant is also requesting waivers for the rear yard perimeter setback and the minimum ground floor transparency. Those two modifications, should the commission wish to approve the project, should be added to the site plan approval motion. So Nick, if you're taking notes, that's the perimeter rear yard setback and then the minimum facade transparency on the ground floor. A tree removal permit is required for the removal and replacement of one tree, and all reviews are recommending approval subject to some minor items to be addressed on a final plan set. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Barrett, would you like to move forward with comment and presentation?
Yes, sure. First of all, thank you everyone for being able to accommodate us tonight. I know these are unprecedented times. So we've got to make it somehow through this. So I appreciate everyone's time and availability tonight. I am Roger Barrett. I'm the architect, developer, and owner of the project. My partners, John McCann, Luke Beach, and Steve Dumont are also partners in the project. A little bit about myself. I've been a registered architect for 15 years. And I've been living in Rochester Hills for over 5 years, so I'm also a resident of Rochester Hills. I was also the architect of record on the Winchester District project for Craig Singer and First Holdings Management. So I was primarily in charge with the Art Van, ABC Warehouse, and Edge Fitness component of that development. So to the project itself, as discussed with Kristen, we've been working on this project since I believe September, October of last year, and we've gone through extensive site plan work with Kristen and Sarah and Jason for the engineering piece of this. The units, we have 12 units. They're for rent loft type apartments. So each unit's about 950 square feet. They all have their own entrances, rear and front. So they really are almost townhomes in the way they function, but they are going to be for rent units. What we're developing here is kind of a modern loft. So each unit has 20-foot ceilings, large glass windows in the back to provide plenty of daylight. And as mentioned by Kristen, we're going to be providing bike tire repair at the path along with a bench. We have a community garden in the rear of the development for the residents. We're going to have covered parking for 10 spots, primarily to the west of the site. We also have a mail and digital package lockers for deliveries. So each unit will have access to one of the digital lockers that they can have secure package delivery and package pickup. One of the things that's come about, again, because of the COVID-19, this building doesn't have any common doors or common entrances. So in a way, it creates its own social distancing and probably is an amenity moving forward that we didn't necessarily predict. But is something that is a part of this development. So each unit lives as if it's its own house. As mentioned, one of the issues with the development has been meeting the two things that Kristen brought up. So the parking in the side yard and the front doors facing Tinkin. I provided a PDF yesterday with site diagrams, just illustrating the unique issues of the site. So we have an existing common driveway that was installed that connects to the dental office to the west of our property. So we've got a 60-foot future right-of-way that's existing, And then we've got an ingress egress easement that is also existing on the property. And then to the west, we have a 10-foot landscape easement. And then we have your typical setbacks for the building. And then the final component is the 150-foot dead end requirement for the fire truck. So fire trucks with only one entrance into the site are not allowed to go beyond 150 feet without a turnaround. Providing a turnaround on this site would essentially eat up the entire site. So parking was necessitated by the existing easements and by the fire department requirements, or the fire ordinance basically, no more than 150 feet into the site. We do believe this is the highest and best use of the site, and the 12 units fit comfortably on the site. It fits comfortably with parking, setbacks, height requirements, density. We are not asking for variances for any of those kind of standard development issues. We meet the parking requirement, and there was one other piece of this I'm forgetting right now, but it'll probably come up. Oh, landscaping. Currently on the site, there's about 5 trees. 3 of them are dead. 2 of them we're going to be protecting. We are going to meet the ordinance by providing 24 new trees in the areas that are required. And then we will actually have a total of 58 new trees on this site. So we're going well above and beyond what's required. Due to the nature of our site, we will have trees that are in the middle corridors and surrounding the entire site. We also have 71 shrubs and perennial plantings also throughout the site. So our purpose was to create a well-designed building, a well-designed site that would attract tenants to it. And you know, the other piece of this is we love the site being off of Tinkin and its adjacency to the Paint Creek Trail. So one of the other amenities that we're offering is an external covered secure bike rack. That would be a vertical bike rack on the side of the building, so that tenants wouldn't have to walk their bikes through the development or into their units. They could securely store them on the outside of the building. I think that's about it. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. Of course, we're looking for approval for the tree removal permit and for the site plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Bernabet, can I also ask the applicant, can you speak, you also sent out a letter to the neighboring properties and invited them to a meeting, did you not?
Yes, that is on my list. We did mail the neighboring properties to the south. We sent them a letter describing the project, and then we sent them diagrams, renderings, and essentially the package that you have in front of us. And nobody attended the meeting. So but we did reach out to all the neighbors, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Gentry, email communication?
Nothing has come in.
I think we had one for this item that probably was listed from the canceled February meeting from a Benjamin Bear. You don't have that, no?
Oh, well, it's in the packet. Yeah, so it came in a while ago. It was an email. He had a question about traffic, and that was provided in the packet.
Yes, he did have questions in regard to traffic. Thank you. Ms. Roediger, is there any public comment at this point?
At this time, I know there's no one in the auditorium, and I'm checking my attendee list right now to see if there's anyone who is on the Zoom call who would like to raise their hand, or if there's anyone on the phone. If they would like to speak, you need to hit *9. And out of my list of attendees, I do not see anyone doing either of those things. I will let you know if that changes.
Hey, thank you. Mr. Gaber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. I want to thank the applicants for bringing this in front of us. This is a very small, constrained site, and you've been very creative in terms of coming up with with a potential use for this site with your design. I have to note that this is the site there are two dimensions here. I mean, the size of the site, and Kristen, I'm wondering, when you did your calculations and stuff, did you look at the gross acreage of the site or the net acreage? Because the gross acreage was about 0.785 acres, but when you take out the road right of way and such, it's 0.569 acres. So it really is only 25,000, I believe, square feet in size instead of the 34,000 that's cited in the report. So I just wanted to make sure that, well, I guess I wanted to understand how you looked at this from the net or the gross standpoint.
Are you talking about the outdoor amenity, the open space on the site?
Yeah, I guess that's what that would primarily apply to. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So generally, we rely on the applicant's calculations for that, and that's what they provided. You're correct that the right-of-way portion would typically not be included. So I would, I guess, defer to the applicant on that one.
Sure, yeah, we did include the gross site, including the right-of-way in that calculation. But again, we feel like our development's an appropriate size and shape for the site.
See, I think what we're trying to do, I mean, this is a difficult site because you've got an office on one side, dental office on one side, you've got the AT&T station on the other side, you've got that entrance drive that comes in and cuts off a certain chunk on the corner. But what you have here is very tight. I'm assuming the dimension between the two buildings, the two long buildings, is about 10 feet. The clearance between the two?
Yes.
Is that about it? Okay. I mean, that is very tight. Looking back, I thought about this in some detail and then look back in the ordinance under the flexible business zoning in terms of the intent and such. And I kind of remember this going back when the FB districts were created way back when. I don't remember exactly when that was. But in looking at the purpose, what I gathered is from that, and what my recollection was, is that those are really supposed to be used for larger sites to basically, craft developments out of big sites. Like, for example, I know that Bill Gilbert's site was looked at, at certain times, potentially just using the FB classifications. And I think it works for those type of sites. And I think one of the reasons for that is a couple of the hurdles we have here dealing with the modifications that are being required, that there be some type of street access in front of the units and then parking in the rear. And I think that's in part to basically look at, having larger sites that have the room to do this so that you do have more clearance between buildings, between units and such, to be able to meet those qualifications. And, unfortunately, that doesn't apply in this situation because the site is too tight to have that type of configuration. I mean, basically, you would need to run one building, east-west to be able to accomplish that. So I think, while I admire your creativity and such, I think that given the purposes of the FB, as I understand it, and what we're trying to accomplish here, I really don't think they mesh on this particular site. So I definitely have difficulties with this proposed project, for those reasons. I think, maybe if we could, have this site zone, multifamily and do something with it, or combine it somehow, but I just don't think that flexibility is available here. And I just have a hard time shoehorning the FB criteria to a half-acre site, which is what we're being requested to do. So those are my comments, and that's my reaction to this development. But I do give you guys a lot of credit for being creative with the design. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kalsunas.
Thank you, Chairperson Bernabic. First question, the question about the acreage. And Mr. Gaber noticed and the calculation of the acreage. And again, I didn't pick this up in a conversation, but would this require a development that's smaller than what we currently have? Based upon, is it I guess, Kristen,
No, so there's not in the FB district, there's not, a prescribed density or a minimum site size that would come into play here. I think that Mr. Gaber was just pointing out that it's a smaller site than the 34,000 square feet if you take out the public right of way. So I think he was just noting that it's about a half an acre. But it doesn't affect any of the requirements in terms of the standards for FB.
So Mr., and I don't see that, Mr. Burnett, are you aware of some of the issues that we're having with apartment complexes in the city and parking?
No, not offhand, no.
So you have right now 12 apartment or 12 units. Thank you. And we have a total of 19 parking spots.
Correct.
And I guess I would question the 2 are handicapped, and then 1 sort of hangs into the driveway, which it will be hard to sort of consider that a parking spot. Looking at the first one as you come in on the right.
Correct.
And 10 includes the 2 handicap spots.
Correct.
Okay. We are getting, and we just had one, that the basic trend in the city was a lot of people would have more than 1 car.
Mm-hmm.
Either there's 2 people inside the house, or the 1 person who has a car would have 2.
Right.
And I understand where the different parking requirements and this and that, but now we're trying to see how everything is working. And I have to agree with Mr. Gaber. 10 feet between 2-story buildings. I don't think you're going to have enough parking lot where I think it's going to hurt your investment parking.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to get less dense on this one. I'm sorry, less dense. It's just too much for this property. I don't think we've ever seen a development where we've packed so much into this. And I think you're going to be hurting yourself with the parking situation. And we're seeing that with other developments where sometimes 2 is not enough.
Of course, I appreciate the concern, and we've looked into it. The requirement is for 18 spots. We're currently providing 19 spots, so we're 1 over on the parking per the ordinance. We can only go off of the ordinance in terms of working. And I worked closely with Kristen and Sarah on this, and we had a lot of discussions on parking. At the end of the day, we're meeting the ordinance essentially for the parking based on the density of the units. So as an architect, I've been doing this for a long time. When the units and the parking and everything lines up, it usually means the project fits comfortably on the site. If you imagine this as an apartment building with a covered hallway, you'd have maybe 6 feet between the units as a main corridor. This is a different development, and we're trying to differentiate ourselves from a typical apartment building. That's why we're creating these town lofts as we've described them. So again, in working through this since September, we've massaged this site over and over again to make it meet the ordinance, meet the requirements, and to basically work. We have a lot of confidence that this will be a good development. And, again, it's a unique site. It's already got a driveway that tells you, here's where the driveway is going in. It's not an overly deep site, so here's where the parking essentially needs to be. And then within that, we were able to work the 12 units. again, these units are only 900 to 950 square feet. These are not 1,200 square foot, 2-bedroom apartments. These are 1 bedroom, and the bedrooms are actually lofts that are above the kitchen area. So, again, I understand, parking's an issue, but we do meet the ordinance. And, I would think, and frankly, this is maybe a bigger discussion, 10 years from now, between autonomous vehicles, ride sharing, and working from home, and I saw it at Winchester, the request was, we want less parking. Give us less parking. So I think the trend, this is a 50 to 100-year building. It's not a next 2-year building. So, our hope is that over time, you may come back to us and say, we need more landscaping where parking is because people don't use parking anymore. Again, we're looking for someone that's going to want to be active, use the trail, someone that's going to be biking, someone that's maybe someone that does work from home. So these are all the things that have gone into the development of this project.
So you made 2 valid points about parking if you meet the ordinance, and it's yes. Granted, 2 of the spots are handicapped, so you better hope someone in your facility will be handicapped to use those spots. But again, and the reason why I asked you if you're aware of what's happening around you, you're going to need 2 spots per unit. And I'm trying to think about how this could relate to this property, but I see people using the office building. I see people using that driveway incorrectly in the future, and that's going to be something that we're going to have to deal with. And maybe we have to go and revise our traffic ordinance in regards to these developments, but they're going to end up with sales that you don't have because you don't have parking.
Right.
So that's sort of the common sense aspect of it.
Yeah, well, and the other piece I'd like to point out is I believe the FB overlay specifically asks for and encourages denser developments. So we were also reacting to that when we were identifying this site to develop it.
Yeah, I'm in my mind right now in regards to the density and some of the looking at, and I have a map pulled up of what's around you.
Yeah.
Looking at the density, looking at what's around you, looking at your request for the rear yard setback and minimum facade transparency, at least for the rear yard setback, there's too much on this development to me right now. I'm going to leave it at that and look forward to what the rest of my commissioners say, but I'm at right now with Mr. Gaber. This is the tightest I've ever seen anything packed onto a property. And I understand about the ordinance and the parking, but I will tell you that it will be an issue that the city is going to have to deal with in the future because people are going to be inappropriately parking with your neighbors. But I will leave it at that, and I'll look forward to hearing what the rest of the commissioners say. Thank you, Chairperson Bernabic.
Well, can I just ask, actually, Kristen, the 2 items you brought up on the rear setback and the facade transparency, I didn't think those were issues. I thought we met those parts of the ordinance.
So building 3 up against the north property line, the setback, it looks like about 10 feet from the rear yard and 50 feet is required.
But that part of the site is up against an 01 FB1 zoning, which doesn't require any setback at that point. Because then it transitions, that's the AT&T property that we're up against on that part of the north property line. And then the AT&T site transitions to the Bedford Square apartments. And that's where we set back the building to 50 feet.
So I'll double check and confirm that.
And then I did supply a transparency diagram that shows we're at like 28% on the first floor for the entire building, or the set of the buildings.
Okay, I will double check
I
that
believe
too.
in both instances, we'd meet that part. I agree on the parking and the side and the front doors not facing Tinkin, but.
Yep, I'll double check that. If that was my error, then I'll be sure to point that out. The one thing I wanted to mention, since I happen to be unmuted right now, is we, I think, had asked you to maybe look into exploring a shared parking agreement with the adjacent office building for their off hours. I wasn't sure if you wanted to comment on that.
Yeah, and we're definitely open to doing that with the neighbor. You know, our concern is in the future, if something changes, how that agreement gets changed. We don't want to have our site tied to potentially that site in a way that would hurt us in the future. So we'd like our site to be completely standalone and independent, but at the same time, we're more than willing, especially because our hours our hours of people where they would be home would be the opposite hours of where people would be potentially using the office building. So we've looked into that. We haven't contacted them yet, but that is definitely something we'd be willing to do.
Hey, Ms. Kapelanski, did you have any further comment?
No, not at this time. I will double check those two questions from the applicant and raise my hand when I have answers available.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Weaver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this, I tend to agree with my fellow commissioners that this could be a little overdeveloped. 10 feet between these 2-story buildings. I think if you're walking between them, you're going to be in the dark 24 hours a day because of the shade that the buildings provide, and it could be a little uncomfortable as you walk through them. That said, I do like the look. I do like the effort of the landscaping. I like the way you're trying to screen the buildings from Tinkin. I would question some of the planting choices. I don't think you're going to get a slender silhouette sweet gum to grow between the two buildings. Just too much shade. I think you did a nice job creatively working with the parking lot. I do think, I don't think that parking is going to be as big of an issue as some of my fellow chairpersons. It could be, but yeah, I can see why it could be, but yeah, I like the idea of it, but I do agree that it is a little overpopulated, if you will, a little too dense. I guess that's all I have for now.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Neubauer.
I just have a couple questions, and just bear with me, but right now you have the 12 units proposed at 950 square feet, right? With one master bedroom. So each unit is going to be a 1-bedroom unit, which that doesn't necessarily promote a 4-family unit with multiple drivers. There'll be a single person or somebody with a partner or roommate can have 2 cars. So I also agree that the parking may not be as big of an issue as presented, but the 10-foot distance and that walkway being so small and so up against the building, this gives me pause. So I understand that when you propose a 950 square foot loft style house or living unit, you're not necessarily going to get, a 4-family unit with, mom and dad driving and then 2 teenagers. And if there's a way to cooperate with the neighboring units on parking, I think that would resolve it. But the 10-foot space between the buildings is what gives me a little bit of pause. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Gaber.
Thank you. Just something I forgot to ask last time. So these buildings, essentially, you're the configuration of your east and your west building. Am I understanding this correctly? Because I don't think the packet really shows this. The westerly building, basically the windows that are kind of 2 stories on one side of the building that create the loft look, those are facing the building to the east. Isn't that correct? In the middle of that walkway?
Yes, that's correct.
So basically you've got these huge, beautiful windows in 2 stories, and they're looking at a building 10 foot away.
Correct. That's why if you look at the landscape plan, we've emphasized the landscaping on the west side of the east building so that the units, basically 1, 2, 3, and 4, are looking into the quote alley. And that's a beautifully landscaped alley. We've really put intention into how that's going to be, what the view of that unit is out, and how that will be, how livable that'll be to be able to have that view.
And thank you, I appreciate that. Is there any landscaping, the 3 units on the northerly building that are facing south to the northerly edges of those 2 buildings? There's no landscaping, or is there, to create that same effect for them? Because I believe they're still 10 feet away as well.
Yeah, but those units are facing north. So those units will be facing towards what is the edge of the AT&T property, and there will be some landscaping back there.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just want to reiterate, I mean, from my standpoint, I still don't think this is the intended use of FB1. And, I would just counsel my colleagues that essentially, if they meet the ordinances for parking and such, there's not a whole lot we can do. I mean, essentially, other than change the ordinance if they meet the ordinance. But there are some variations that they're requesting a modification for in here, primarily dealing with the, meeting the FB1 requirements. And I think that that if there's an issue, that's where we should be focusing, not on areas where they meet ordinance requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kapelanski.
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to point out that my comments earlier during my presentation were in error. So the northern property does transition to FB. The applicant is correct that that northern setback is not a concern. And the plans also indicate 26% transparency on the ground floor in conformance with ordinance. So the modifications that are being requested are to allow the parking in the side yard. And then there was also the additional modification for the principal entrance of Unit 5 facing Tinkin. So those are the 2 requested modifications. They otherwise meet all the standards of FB.
Thank you. Mr. Hooper.
Thank you, Chairperson Bernardo. Kristen, what was that again? Parking in the side yard, and what was the second one?
The second one is the front entrance of Unit 5 faces Tinkin. It's required to face the side or rear yard. All other entrances are fine, but that Unit 5 entrance does face Tinkin.
Well, and I would like to
how is it? 1, 2, and 3.
I'm sorry, what was that?
There's building 1, 2, and 3. What's Unit 5?
Let me get to the plan set and I can let you know.
And let me say that relocating the door of Unit 5 is an easy modification, as it would be in line with the rest of the doors in that building. We had put 5 facing Tinkin as a design element to give it a more residential feel, but we could easily move that door back to the alleyway.
And Roger, is Unit 5 in building 1 or 2?
It's in building 2. It's the
front unit?
Southeasterly unit.
Okay, I see what you're talking about.
So moving that door is not a big issue at all for us.
Okay, the other 2 questions, I guess, that you have in here. The modification, like in your staff report B2, that's what you're referencing, this principal entrance, each unit should be located on the ground level and shall face a street, so 1 unit does not, which you can modify and make it work, so then that would remove that modification. And then the other one is B5, garage doors may only face a secondary street or rear yard, and all dedicated off-street parking shall be located behind a building not in compliance. All street parking is located inside yard. Which this isn't the first time we've had this. We've had a number of places that, correct me if I'm wrong, that have requested side yard parking, correct?
That's correct. We've had that modification requested before.
Okay. Well, yeah, as far as the, oh, I got one more question. The, looking at the building, architectural plans, A100, are these like planters that are hanging off the building, or what off this, window ledges, off the window ledge, or what is this that's shown on here?
Depending on what you're looking at, those are just awnings over the top of the doors.
The doors. Okay, it looks like it's over a window.
What plan are you looking at?
A100.
Okay. In the alleyway, there are planters on the ground on the eastern building. And then on the western building, on the east face of the west building, those are awnings overhanging the large windows.
So these boxes that you have here,
those are planters.
all right, I wish we had a way you could put this drawing up or something like that to show it, but
So I can put up sheet A100. I'm not exactly sure which box you're referring to though, Commissioner Hooper, but I can put it up if you'd like, and maybe you can kind of guide me through where exactly you're looking at.
I think he's looking at, look at A100, but also look at
the first floor and the second floor, they have these shadow boxes that
Greg, look at A300 and you'll see there's an awning that's overhung the door. That's a black line off the glass panel. I think they're referring to that.
Yeah, that's what's being showed kind of in the dashed line because they're above.
It's like a little awning that's hung out by two rods.
Right.
So you've got a front entrance and then a rear exit. Is that what I'm gathering by this?
Yes, each unit has a front entrance and a rear entrance.
And then this is all glass on the rear side?
That's correct. That's double height glass because the space in there is double height at that point.
Okay, so I'm sure it's all tempered then, probably. Probably by code they have to be.
Yeah.
Well, I guess my house is 7 feet from my neighbor, so I don't walk there all that often. But you know, I roughly, you know, he teaches a 2-story house, and mine's a story and a half, pretty much 2 stories. The way the architect maybe raised the height of my roof, but yeah, there's no sunlight between our homes at all. Period. No grass grows there at all. And I guess what you have here is almost all sidewalk, and then planter boxes. I guess is what you're having on the floor. Looking at it. So, okay, and you said before this is for rent. So, who's going to be the property manager? You are?
At this point, yes, because it's 12 units, and I literally live about a half a mile from the site.
And what are you proposing for rentals?
Based on current market rates, somewhere around $1,900 to $2,000 a month.
For a 1-bedroom, 1 bath?
Yes, city flats in LaChurco's building and what's the new one, Cedar Ridge. We use those as comps as new apartments.
Yeah, those are all 2-bedroom.
Cedar Valley. They have a variety. So they have 1-bedroom units all the way up to 2- and 3-bedroom units.
Okay.
And we did have an appraisal done, and the appraisal agreed with the rental rates that we were suggesting.
Yeah. So really, if you're going to, I guess to Mr. Gaber's point, you know, you're you're gonna deny this, the only thing you're gonna deny it on is that the parking in the side yard. This is, the applicant's gonna meet all the requirements that we have in our ordinance. Is that an accurate statement? Or Sarah or Kristen?
Yeah, no, I do wanted to kind of jump in. You know, as Mr. Barrett indicated at the beginning, we've met with him for quite some time and gone through many iterations of this plan, and made it very clear there were going to be some concerns about parking based on how we know the Planning Commission reviews plans. But as indicated, you know, the FB district, and I admit I wasn't here when it was crafted, Mr. Gaber, but looking at where it's located, you know, yes, there are locations where there's large sites that can be redeveloped, such as along Rochester Road. There's also a number of them along Auburn Road that are a lot smaller sites. There's some of these up on Tinkin that are a lot smaller. And I think, you know, the intention of the FB was not to limit density. It was to limit it based on, you know, the form. It wasn't supposed to be a use. It was a form-based district, obviously. Especially going through the master plan process that we just went through that identified trying to create new types of housing, more of the missing middle. This is definitely more of an urban project that we haven't seen, you know, necessarily some of the other areas, but looking at the location, you know, surrounded by multiple family and non-residential uses on the east and west, and the proximity to Rochester and to the trail, you know, we thought it could make sense here. And going back to Mr. Cooper's point, it meets the ordinance for 99.9% of the requirements. So yeah, I guess I would maybe disagree a little bit. I do think this is the type of development that the form-based district is intended for. I understand the concern that it may be a lot from what we're used to, but I think the scale of it in terms of a 2-story building, considering what's around it, it seems to kind of fit the area, in my personal opinion.
A couple more questions looking at on the east side of the building, you have it set off for this water service. Is that the purpose of why the building's not on that property line on the east side, building 2, because of the water service?
That the water service is a result of the building being off, because that was the best place to run it. The building is actually off of that property line because as a zoned FB1, if AT&T ever sold this, they could go 0 lot line up against us. So we were trying to defend our building a little bit by leaving a buffer if someone ever potentially came and said, you know, we're going to max this out and go 0 lot line on that site.
But building 3 is on the property line.
Building 3 is, but that's the side. There's no windows. We felt comfortable. Those buildings are turned to the north. So that's why we have that one up against the property line.
And being that this is, you have these rear yard entrances or exits, you really couldn't put it against the property line anyhow.
That's correct.
So this is really the minimum you can push it to the east, is the 7 feet off the property line?
Yes.
Well, it definitely is an urban setting for a millennial. Single empty nester or millennial. There's no doubt about that. You know, you're not going to have senior citizens here because they're not going to walk the second story to go to their bedroom every night.
Right.
So you're going to have young urban professionals that are going to rent this thing. That, you know, more than likely, you probably won't. Your 1.5 spots per location are probably, you know, probably gonna be okay. Yeah, it's tough one. I guess I got to find a, you know, legal reason other than the fallback of harmonious and compatible in order to deny it. And it is different as far as architecture goes too. I mean, you're looking at your treatment for the brick and facade and stone veneer, and that with the color schemes as presented, I think it is attractive in my opinion for that. So with that, I guess I will thank you and bow out at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gaber.
Is there any requirement in our ordinance of a minimum distance between multifamily residential buildings?
Building separation requirements in the FB? No. No, I think that the RM1 might have something, but I don't believe the FB does.
So you could be, conceivably, you could be 5 feet apart. I mean, it's, what you're saying is it's arbitrary? There's no requirements in the ordinance?
I don't believe that FB has any requirements. I will double check, but I know that there are some requirements in other districts.
It would just be building code.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. What about building code requirements other than zoning ordinance requirements?
It would just depend on, sorry, Kristen, it would just depend on the building materials, and they'll cover that through building review about what type of exterior walls they have to have in terms of fire separation and things like that.
And the building department has reviewed the plan and is recommending approval.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in response to Mr. Hooper's point, I mean, you know, it doesn't satisfy the FB condition that the principal entrance is located at the ground level and shall face the street. And I think that's partially in the FB ordinance to, you know, limit certain abuses in certain situations to have, you know, building entrances facing, you know, minor streets within a development. So I, you know, somewhat disagree with Ms. Roediger on this point. I just don't think that this fits under the FB classification. I think that I understand that, you know, the area is FB, but it's also surrounded by FB as well. That overlay, you know, I don't think in the city that overlay applies to just small sites. I think everywhere you look at that overlay in the city, it covers a much broader area. And I think that's what the intent is to cover larger developments and larger sites. So I just don't think this fits in FB. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Boyer.
Thank you. Beautiful looking plan. I like the architecture. And I know it's going to that more urban, and as we get more densely populated, you're right, we want to say we want to live, work, and play all in the same place, and this is ideally suited for maybe not having a car and just having a bike. You can bike to the grocery store, bike on the trail, and you don't need a car. So I kind of understand where parking might not be. Would you have assigned parkings for each unit, though, so there wouldn't be infighting among all the tenants about this is my spot? Or
yeah, the intention right now is that each unit would be assigned one parking spot, and then the rest of them would be open. Yes.
Right. And then about the door that faces onto Tinkin, I think if you move that so it faces to the side, it actually will make the buildings look odd from Tinkin. If I'm looking at the site plan, page 1, it's balanced with the other building, having the doors appear to be that way with the one that appears to be a door on the other building. So I wouldn't have any issue with that door. I do worry about that middle part not having enough light to grow those trees like Mr. Weaver pointed out. And seeing how you have all of those people in that one building on the west side are going to be looking at a brick bare building and just watching what their neighbors are doing without having any green. It almost makes you wonder, could you not flip those around and put the windows on the other side by the parking, but then put a lot of trees on that side, so then they're looking at that tree and not just at that building. Because I just feel like everybody in that building on the west side is going to have a poor view no matter what. And I guess in the end, when your rentals are renting or not renting, that'll set your price point. And plus, going into the recession that we're going to hit now big time, I'm sure you're not going to get those price points anymore for at least for maybe 5 years. But otherwise, that was all my worry, is that middle part not having the green for that one building has those huge windows. They're just going to be looking at a brick wall. That's all I have. Thank you, Chair Bernabik.
Mr. Kalsunas.
Thank you, Chairperson Bernabik. Couple things. Looking at the development, I love, and I'll probably use an appropriate term of shop glass that you have across the back of the property of glass all the way top. Absolutely love it. I love the look of the buildings. I love the brick. I think it's definitely top notch. But as a planning commissioner, looking at the rules that we have in front of us, and then looking at how the rules resulted in the building, you've definitely done a very good job of what I'll call pushing the limits. Now, I always had the saying, just because there's an example doesn't mean that's a good one. And if this goes forward today, this is development I think all of us are going to watch very closely, because it's going to do several things. It's either going to work, it's not going to work because it's too dense, and then it's going to be our basis on how we should change our parking ordinance, as well as all the other type of items that you're taking advantage of to get the density that you want. There's an example of like Forester Square where they put too many things in one place and they cram the roads up against it. There's an example in Troy, which is very similar like this, and has half the city up in arms about it. But with the proximity of this property, it's really going to be all on you. I'm afraid that because of our parking ordinance, we're going to end up burdening the city with people parking in bad places. And it's going to require us to change the ordinance, but that's, I guess, wait to be seen. So, Chairperson Brnabic, I would like to move the motion in the packet to, first off, to approve the tree removal permit in the matter of City File number 19-047, Tinkin Trail Lofts. The Planning Commission grants a tree removal permit based on the plans dated and received by the Planning Commission on January 29th, 2020, with the following 2 pre-printed findings and 2 pre-printed conditions.
Do I have a second? I actually have to say I have a concern that the density is much too high for this property, and there is a concern with the parking. The spaces just aren't enough. The suggestion to use shared parking with an office is a little much for me, because these are townhouses, which means they are people's residences, and to me, that should always be dedicated parking. I like the building design. I agree with other commissioners. I really like the building design. I just think it's a little bit too much for that property. And I do think Mr. Gaber has a point with the original intention of FB. So that is my 2 cents. I have a motion by Mr. Kalsunas, seconded by Mr. Detloff, in the matter of City File number 19-047, Tinkin Trail Offs. The Planning Commission grants a tree removal permit based on plans dated and received by the Planning Department on January 29th, 2020, with the following 2 findings and 2 conditions. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote.
Kalsunas,
Yes.
Detloff,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Cooper,
Yes.
Gaber,
No.
Boyer,
Yes.
Newbauer,
Yes.
Brnabic.
No. That is a vote of 6-2.
Chairperson Brnabic,
Mr. Kalsunas?
I would like to move the motion for the site plan. I guess I'll be looking forward to this, the roll call vote on this one. In the matter of City File number 11-047, Tinkin Trail Lofts, the Planning Commission approves The site plan based on plans dated received by the planning department on January 29, 2020, with the following 7 pre-printed findings, 2 pre-printed conditions, with the added condition that the front entrance of Unit 5 that currently faces Tinkin be turned to the west side of the building to face the alley.
Hey, do I have a second?
I guess I got a question on that too then.
Okay, discussion on the motion, Mr. Hooper.
Is there a condition about the planning commission approves the off-street parking being located at the side yard?
I believe I saw that in it's in the findings under number 5.
Okay, very well.
Is there any other discussion on the motion? Mr. Weaver.
Is it too late to add a condition that we look at the landscaping in the between all the buildings? Because I still have a hard time thinking anything's going to grow with them being so close together.
Mr. Calcinos.
I think that's a plan. Quick question to staff. The plantings, these are all additional plantings because obviously we're removing one planting. So everything that they are adding between the buildings are not really regulated or required for the site plan?
Right.
Okay, because it's only technically they have to replace one. So what I would do is just put a condition that the staff reviews the plantings in between the alleyway and to judge the feasibility of their feasibility in that area, because you just took a 10-foot walkway and you just made it smaller.
We can work with our forestry division and see if they have recommendations for species.
Okay, so that this developer work with staff to come up with recommendations for species for trees that could be feasible in the alleyway.
You're only talking about the 5 silhouette sweet gums, right?
I think anything's going to have a tough time growing. I mean, there are some that are more shade tolerant than others, but those specifically prefer full sun to arc shade. I think they're going to get full shade there. The hydrangea may do a little bit better, but it's going to be tough with a, give or take 25-foot building and a 10-foot space between them.
No, you're right. You're right. It's not going to grow.
I would say the same for the building on the north side too.
I guess if the motion maker could approve that condition.
Yes.
Make sure we catch that.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve site plan for Tinkin Trail Offs with the 7 findings, the 2 pre-printed conditions, and the additional conditions numbering 3 and 4 as stated for the record by Mr. Calcina. I will take a roll call vote.
Keltsinis,
Yes.
Hooper,
Yes.
Bowyer,
Yes.
Newbauer,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Detloff,
Yes.
Gaber,
No.
Bernabik.
No. The motion passes 6-2.
Let me just say thank you. And we take all of the concerns very seriously. We want this project to succeed more than anybody. And with regard to the landscape, I will definitely look into that. We're working with Don Westfall, and I rely on them to suggest the plantings, and I will definitely have them look at it again and work with the city on finding what will work there. But again, I appreciate the discussion and your approval. Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate your investment too.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, I will move on to our next item on the agenda, public hearing and request for a wetland use permit recommendation. City file number 19-026 for impacts up to approximately 5,471 square feet for construction activities associated with the Hamlin outdoor storage. Proposed recreational vehicle facility on 9.7 acres located on the north side of Hamlin between John R. and DeQuinder, zoned I industrial, parcel number 15-24-326-004. Michael Kyleman, Weingard Development is the applicant. Good evening.
Good evening.
Ms. Kapelansky, staff report, please.
Yes, thank you. The applicant is proposing an outdoor storage facility. This is for recreational vehicles on Hamlin, just east of John R. There are no structures proposed as part of the plan. The site is zoned industrial, which does permit recreational vehicle storage. In order to achieve the required screening, the applicant has shown a berm surrounding the storage area along with associated landscaping. The site is subject to the previous version of the tree conservation ordinance. 172 trees are to be removed and all of the replacements will be paid into the city's tree fund. A tree removal permit is required for those removals. There are also 3 regulated wetlands on site. A wetland use permit is required for the impacts to wetlands A, B, and C. All of the impacts are to areas of low ecological value, and approval of the wetland use permit and the associated natural features setback modification is recommended by our environmental consultant, ASTI. All staff reviews are also recommending approval subject to some minor plan modifications. That's all.
Yeah. And Mr. Kalman, would you like to comment or present?
Sure. Mike Kleeman from Wiegans. We're located 37580 Mound Road in Sterling Heights. Family business, been in business since 1969. And we've owned this site for quite a long period of time. It's sat vacant. It was somewhat of a challenge to us to find a use that would be suitable for the site based on the zoning and based on the area, especially with the landfill directly to the north of us. In investigating and determining what would be allowed in there and what would have probably the minimal amount of impact along Hamlin Road, we decided that this particular use would be good for the area. And we're available for questions. I do believe our engineer is on as well.
Hey, thank you.
Welcome.
Mr. Hooper.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson Bernavik. Okay, outdoor storage. What RVs? What type vehicles are you looking at for here?
Yeah, it would vary anywhere from a boat to a camper type of thing, similar to what's right next to us there, just east of us on Hamlin.
Okay, so your maximum height of your potential leasee would be what?
Height of an RV? I don't think there's anything over 13 and a half feet.
Tall?
I'm thinking, and there would be nothing above.
They wouldn't make it under most bridges, 13 and a half feet.
Right.
Yeah, they'd be wiped out on there. Go down 994, they won't make it.
Exactly.
So probably 12 foot, I mean, at best. I mean.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's a standard camper.
Okay. So per the ordinance, then if it's 12 foot tall, then you get a screen for that 12 foot tall unit, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Right.
So they have the 6 foot berm plus the plantings in addition.
Okay, so I'm looking on your berm. this little addendum 1 or whatever that was handed out here, berm 1 cross section, and the height of the berm is measured from the inside, not the outside. So you've got a roughly 4.25 foot berm, 4 foot 4 inch berm. That's screening from the inside, because it looks like, you know, look on your grading plan, you're adding about 3 feet of fill over the entire site. So you're picking the site up 3 feet, and then you're only putting a 4 foot 4 inch berm around it with plantings that's not going to screen anything, not going to provide an opaque screen at all. Looking on yeah, some of these, I mean, these, even though you're putting in 10 foot evergreens, it's going to be 7-8 years before that that fills in to make an opaque screen on top of your 4 foot to shield an 8 foot on top of that to make so it's a 12 foot around it. You'd never be able to see it. Provide that opaqueness. Just looking at, so either one, you have to add a whole lot more trees to provide that screen. And I'm just talking, you know, I don't care about the screening from the landfill. I could care less about that. But it's just from Hamlin Road and then the east and west sides that you can see as you're driving down Hamlin Road. North side, no one's ever going to develop back in a landfill anyhow, so that doesn't matter. That would be my, just looking at it, I don't think it's going to be adequate at all to, you're going to park something in there with a 4 foot berm and you're going to see a tree that's spaced for looking at here. And there's people that are more smart about this than me about this, but you're looking at this berm width that's what, 250 feet, 280 feet. And on that 280 foot, for instance, on the south berm, under that 280 feet across there, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 32 trees staggered. And you're going to see between all that, and with the 4 foot berm goes up to my chest, you're going to see everything that's parked in there. It's not going to be screened at all. So I think right out of the gate, something more has got to happen. Some additional screening, and I prefer green screening. You know, I don't want to see you know, fencing, more opaque fencing, stuff like that. So I would prefer more of a green opaque landscape screening for that, so we don't have to. We aren't going to see that or wait 7-8 years for it to fill in, to not to be seen.
Yeah, I probably can defer to our engineer, but I show a 6 foot berm. We could make that berm, you know, as tall as you would want it to be. And if you're not concerned on the plantings, because there are quite a few back facing the landfill, we could move those to the front to Hamlin Road.
Well, that cut the ordinance comes in, so I don't know if the buffer. I'll defer that to Ms. Kaplansky and Ms. Rodeker about that.
Okay. But I do show the berm being 6 foot.
Well, Ms. Kaplansky, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if maybe your engineer wants to come on and explain the cross-section drawing that you guys sent over earlier today. That might be helpful. Because it is a little bit confusing as to whether or not, let me pull it back up, whether or not the berm is 4 feet as measured from the inside of the berm where the parking area would be. To me, it looks like the larger side would be on the Hamlin side. But if the applicant could maybe confirm that or go through that cross section.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Hi, this is Lori. So on the cross section, it has a 6 foot average height of the berm. So you have 4.27 feet on the inside on the parking lot side, and then 7.73 feet on the external portion, I guess, if you will, of the berm. So to the best of my knowledge, the ordinance did not state which side to measure the berm from, because I know that's something that we had a question about. So we just went with an average value.
So we would, yes, we would typically use the average value, but just to confirm then, Lori, the taller portion of the berm will be facing Hamlin Road.
Correct. Yes. Yes. The other portion of it is the on-site portion of it.
Okay, which
where it says proposed gravel. That's the proposed parking lot on the inside. Yes.
Right. So I think that's the concern then, that the cars, that the recreational vehicles will be somewhat elevated when compared to the road.
Correct. They're going to be sitting up 3 foot taller. So you take that drawing there. So 730, you got a 730 elevation for your inside of your parking lot. Put a 12-foot vehicle on it. Well, that's 742. It's going to shine all over Hamlin Road. I mean, there's unless you have something significant, larger berm I'm all for, with more plantings to create an opaque screen.
So I'm sorry, are you're concerned about the headlights shining out there, or you're concerned about people driving down Hamlin Road, the ability of them to see the vehicles on the site?
Correct. Seeing the vehicles. By the ordinance, you have to provide the opaque screening so you don't see the vehicles on the inside.
So maybe we can.
It was true. If you were lowering the site compared to the berm like that, well then yeah, you're sinking the vehicles down lower than the berm. Then I would agree with you. You have a taller berm to begin with, and a landscape beyond that, and then you're not going to see it as much. But in your case, you're actually elevating the site, and you're putting the vehicles on the inside, and you're going to see them clear as day.
So maybe we can kind of do a line of sight type of a diagram to figure out how tall we should make it, and then maybe make the berm taller. Mike, are you okay with that? Or
we can certainly make the berm taller. I don't think we can make the actual parking lot lower due to.
No, we cannot, because we're restricted by outlets and different things like that, right. Which is the reason that it's raised up. So why don't we take a look at that? We can take a look at the line of sight, and then we can raise that berm up a bit. We can make it taller.
Yeah, we can make it taller. If the commission wishes to make the whole berm taller, sections of it taller, whatever the desire would be.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Boyer.
Thank you. On the berm, my question is, you have all the trees on top of this berm that you're putting in. And so is there an irrigation plan in there? And what's the plan for replacing trees as they die? Because a lot of times when you see trees planted on a berm, they usually die.
Yeah, I think there is an irrigation plan, an irrigation system on the plan, along with, if a plant does die, it will be replaced, maintained and replaced.
Great, thank you. Those are my questions.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Kalsunas.
Thank you, Chairperson Bernabe. Questions to the applicant. And thank you for supplying the cross section of the berm, because I actually requested that yesterday when I was looking at what you have on the plans, because I might not be a landscape architect, but I have piled some dirt in a hill once in a while and done a little engineering on the side. And your plan shows the berm. I assume that's the berm shown in the plan of about 45 feet wide, judging by the setback number of 50 feet that you're up to the lot line.
Laurie, can you address that? I think that the width of the berm probably has something to do with the slope that is required.
Right, it's a 1-on-3 slope. So, and you'll have to excuse me, I don't have a set of plans in front of me. I'm looking at a PDF on the computer right now. But so it'd be 7 times 21.
Is it, I guess, how is 1 and 3 determined? So
can I interject? There's a berm detail on the landscape plan that answers these questions.
37.
What page?
Page 10.
And
It also has a 4-foot top on it. So, I mean, you would just measure that. You just calculate, 7.73 times 3 plus 4 plus 4.27 times 3. And that will give you the width of the berm.
So this sketch that you gave us yesterday.
Mm-hmm. And that sketch isn't, I mean, that's in one place.
Is that
the,
out of
the height?
scale?
I'm sorry, what?
So when I look at the sketch that you gave us yesterday, it's 4 feet tall, and I do agree with Mr. Hooper. If you're raising the property up 3 feet, you're going to have to require some extra height in order to get to there. But you're showing a berm that's 4.27 feet tall.
Well, average of 6.
Well, at least on the one side with the gravel, but then at the very top, you have 4 feet tall.
4 foot wide?
4 foot wide? Yes, sorry, 4 foot wide, which looks like it's out of scale in this drawing. What is the size of the root ball of the trees you plan on installing?
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not a landscaper. I'm an engineer. Mike,
those
can you
are-
answer that?
well, I think they're on the
It'll be on the landscape
tree note?
plan.
Yeah.
But also the root ball will be a
10.
little deeper. Hold on.
I'm just questioning the potential feasibility of that. So that's the berm with 18 and 18 with the 3x1, because your sketch has 3x1 the other way.
So the 24-inch root balls.
Strange.
So the berm ends up being at the base in that particular area, 42 foot wide. You have a 24-inch root ball on your tree. The top of the berm is 4 feet wide.
I was just going to remind the planning commission that we do have a landscape architect on our commission now, so maybe Mr. Weaver could weigh in.
Yeah,
on
I'm
the
waiting for him.
feasibility of-
I'm going to be quiet for this subject, and I'm looking forward to hearing what Mr. Weaver says. I guess my point is that the sketch that was given to us yesterday, the addendum, needs to be revised and made to scale. It's showing a teepee, and it really shouldn't. And it threw me off.
So the scale, a vertical scale is 1 inch is equal to 4 foot. The horizontal scale is 1 inch is equal to 40 feet.
Okay.
You want a 1-on-1? Is that what you're saying?
You threw me into a logarithmic type scale, and I didn't notice that. You get to see a 1 by
That's
1.
how we typically draw our cross sections. Do you
Okay.
want us? Would you like it revised?
For simple people like me, I need the regular 1-to-1. But I will be quiet and listen to what the other commissioners have to say. Thank you, Chairperson Bernard.
Thank you. Mr. Gaber.
Thank you. Real quickly, I agree with the comments that Mr. Hooper raised. I do think that we need to make sure we have that screening there, whether it's in a taller berm, whether it's in dense landscape plantings on top. However that's done to accomplish that, I think we should postpone that and have you do some line of sight drawings to show what it looks like. If you've got an RV parked, backed into that berm on the north side of it, what the line of sight is from somebody driving down the road or walking on the bike path or such. And, however you satisfy that with a larger berm or more dense plantings, however that's accomplished, I think is fine, but that's the screening that we're looking for. And to answer the question, I think, like Mr. Hooper said, we're looking for screening along Hamlin Road. And then the approach is, you may be so far north on both sides of the site on the berm. So if you're driving up and down Hamlin Road, then basically all the contents, the outdoor storage is screened from view. I think that's what the Planning Commission would like to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Detlaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple questions. I agree with the screening comments. Question to the applicant, because it shows 2 employees on that, and the site is accessible like 24/7. So what would be the roles of those employees?
Those would both be my children. They would basically be the operators of the site, if you will.
Okay.
So yeah, that would be those two. It'll be a either a key card entrance or a biometric type entrance through the gate.
Okay.
That's where the 24-hour availability would be.
So for security purposes too, obviously everything I'm assuming would be monitored by cameras and the like?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, and the site is lit.
Okay.
If I can just make a quick comment on the line of sight. And I don't know if you looked at the site directly to the east of us. They have like a 6-foot fence there with, you know, you're seeing about half of the, what would be a camper or a boat that's parked in there. So I think if, you know, if you want total non-visibility from Hamlin Road, we can certainly raise that berm higher and then put the trees on there. I don't want it to look too out of place for you. I mean, you know, driving down it, it would almost look like a total wall of berm, if you will. But again, that's not an issue to the commission's desire. We can make that berm any height you like.
Mr. Weaver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do agree that additional screening is probably necessary. However, I don't think it's going to be as bad as we think, because while we're talking about what's happening on the berm, we're also not noticing or not discussing the trees that are proposed on the opposite side of the walkway there, closer to the road. As you bring something to screen closer to your vantage point, it will help a lot. That being said, I think we could go with, I would rather see larger plant material on the berm rather than making the berm taller. Dr. Boyer had a good point. As you raise something higher out of the ground, it will dry out far quicker. While an irrigation system will help, it will not help during the chilling winds in the winter when things do tend to dry out a lot faster. So, I mean, as far as additional screening, I would say if we can get some larger plant stock at least along the southern edge there, maybe around the corner a little bit, I think that'll help better than a berm increase will. Speaking with the berm, I would agree with Mr. Kalsunis that the sketch that's shown, or we'll call it an elevation that's shown on this landscape plan, does not match up with the one that was provided earlier today. Mainly because the 3-on-1 and the 1-on-3 labeling is flipped in those diagrams. So if we get that kind of revised and drawn at a 1-to-1 scale, so the vertical scale matches the horizontal scale, I think it would be easier to read. The other comment I had is in relation to the detention pond. Is there any proposed landscaping around that to help screen that from the roadway? Because while there are some deciduous trees planted along the walkway, it is pretty spread out, and it kind of offers wide open views into a detention pond, which in some cases it can be nice to look at, but in others not as much. So
you're talking specifically on the Hamlin Road side, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Let me just get down there. I know there's quite a bit of existing foliage there that I don't think is planned on getting touched.
No, I see along the was it the west property line, but between the edge of the basin and the roadway, it does not look like there's
from the roadway to the walking path,
Mm-hmm.
Sidewalk. It's a pretty big sidewalk called a walking path.
Yeah,
that's pretty full. It's actually very full. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's probably the most screened of the whole site, and it's 100% screened.
Okay.
Do a quick Google, road shot there.
Sure. Okay.
But again, if there's something that needs to be added on the front side of that detention pond,
okay,
big deal. I mean, we could even extend the berm in front of that.
Okay, how, just out of curiosity, how far, because I don't see a dimension in here, or at least maybe I'm missing it, but how far is the berm from the edge of Hamlin Road, like where the cars would be?
Oh. It looks, if you, there's the walking path and then a fence, correct? You're walking from Hamlin Road north?
Fence between the berm and the walking path. I see. I'm just trying to get a vantage point from a car driving by. How far away is it from the berm?
So the berm is on the other side of the fence.
Yeah. Now is the fence, you're not proposing any slats or anything to go in the fence, are you?
No, actually that fence
existing,
he put up 2 years ago when they put the path in. So that's a new fence.
Okay. Okay.
The only thing I might suggest is painting it black. Black seems to, you know, hide it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But do we know how far the roadway is from the? Without.
No, I'm trying to figure it out right now, and I'm sorry, I'm
Okay.
working off a PDF, not off a CAD file.
Yeah, no problem. I get it. Is any of that, and how far? What's the grade difference from, we'll say, the walking path to the roadway? Is it even, lower, higher?
Pretty flat out there.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Doing a random search based off scales off Google Earth, you're talking about 30 feet from the road.
Okay. Okay. So it is still pretty tight, but so yeah, like I said, I would suggest taller plant stock, wider plant stock, along the berm, rather than raising the berm.
Is it 30 feet? Because
it's 6. You have a
6
foot right of way.
it should be at least as wide as.
Because there is a jog to the pathway at that point.
Yeah, I think that it's a minimum of 60 feet road to the fence, the right of way.
Sure. Okay.
I agree with that. Center of the road to 60 feet.
Yeah.
Right. And it looks like the road is 728 and the walking path is 726.
Okay.
Just in this one area that I'm looking at.
Sure. Okay. Okay. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Kapelansky?
I just wanted to quickly comment on the stormwater planting. So typically we do have applicants plant around the stormwater basin. In this case, there are trees surrounding most of it except for that area along Hamlin. So we can have them add some plantings between the basin and Hamlin.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hooper?
Well, being that, I guess let me toss this out. I'd like to make a motion to postpone consideration of this to the next available date. The applicant to provide line of sight drawings from Hamlin Road towards the site to project what the initial installation of the berm and landscaping would look like and what shielding will provide for your typical 12-foot tall vehicle that's parked inside, and also provide gate details and what screening is on that for the entrance going into the to the site, and how that's going to look on either end of the berm treatment.
I'll support that.
Okay.
And any other part of our discussion today, you know, adding landscaping for the Hamlin Road to the pond if necessary, depending on what the existing tree vegetation is, whatever the case may be. And then come back with whatever, you know, if it's raising the berm or adding more trees or whatever the appropriate treatment should be for an opaque screen on the southern, western, and eastern berms.
Okay, Ms. Roediger. If we're moving to postpone this item, but the item required a public hearing, should we postpone it until the next time we meet, or should I do that public hearing now since it was advertised for this date?
It was advertised, and so we do have people on the line. Again, when we go to call for the public comment, I don't have anyone that's raised their hand and or hit *9 if they're on a phone, but we still should offer the opportunity since the public hearing was noticed. So I would go ahead and open the public hearing. And hold.
Okay, Ms. Gentry, there's no email communication either then?
No, there are none.
Okay. So I will open the public hearing in regard to the wetland use permit. And not seeing any speakers or emails in for public comment, I will close the public hearing. And I will move on to a motion to postpone until, and I did write them down, but as listed, the 4 requirements by Mr. Hooper. Ms. Gentry, do you have all those?
I do.
Okay. So as stated for the record by Mr. Hooper. So I have a motion by Mr. Hooper, seconded by Mr. Kalsunas to postpone this item for Hamlin Outdoor Storage. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Mr. Kalsunas?
Thank you, Chairperson Bernabic. I also recommend, as we start to tie up the loose ends on this, that the staff work with the applicant as to, again, we'll call it the feasibility of the plants based upon the berm side. As the berm starts to transition in shape through its distance, there was a lot of valid concerns that were brought up if a tree was going to work. And I don't know if there was a irrigation plan listed per se, but I'd like to see the details of that irrigation plan.
So if I may, the irrigation plan is not required until, I believe, final site plan. So we do have a note on the plans that we will be providing an irrigation plan at the point of final engineering plans.
And where's that note at?
That will be on the landscape plan.
What page?
10. I believe
I have to flip through. I
believe it's 10.
Yeah, I think it's 10.
And typically we would just have a note at this point. We wouldn't have.
Right.
Understood. Okay, that's fine. But yeah, let's take a close look at this and make sure we get our forestry people to make sure these trees have proper grading, that we're not just washing water away from them, etc., while they're sitting on that berm.
And one comment I would just like to make for the record is we did follow your landscape art ordinance. So the amount of trees that are on this plan is according to your ordinance.
And again, we're questioning, I think, definitely the height right now. So that's all I have, Chairperson Bernabic.
Thank you. So I will move to take a roll call vote. Ms. Gentry?
Hooper.
Yes.
Kalsunas.
Yes.
Neubauer.
Yes.
Bowyer.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yeah.
Detloff.
Yes.
Gaber.
Yes.
Bernabic.
Yes, that motion passes unanimously. We'll look forward to seeing you back again.
I'm sorry, I did have a question, more point of clarity if I could.
Sure.
I think one of the requirements were screening detail on the gate type and screening detail on the gate. I guess I'm not sure what screening detail for the gate.
Mr. Hooper.
Typical. I'm looking for a typical. I don't see anything in the drawings for a typical what the gate looks like, what it's the height,
right?
Materials. What does it look like?
I'll get the gate detail for you, but I'm more concerned what screening. What do you mean by screening for the gate?
Screening is not the right term, but it's the details of what the gate looks like, so that when you're on Hamlin Road, you see what you're presenting is what you're going to build and what we're going to see from Hamlin Road.
Exactly. Okay, so you want to see the gate.
Yep.
The other thing is, were we able to move on the tree removal permit or the wetland use permit tonight?
No, we postponed the entire project until those conditions are met. Is there any, is there any condition that was requested that you don't agree with?
Oh, no, not at all. I would, we're probably going to go with, I think the biggest thing is screening on the berm. The trees that I just looked at are proposed on there are 10 feet on the evergreen. So we would probably raise that berm up. I don't know that I can get bigger than 10-foot evergreens. Tall.
Mr. Weaver?
Well, yeah, I get that. Is there? Okay, yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay. And do you have any additional questions that you need for clarity?
Well, just the only other one would be the westerly berm, the one that abuts the detention pond. And then to the west of the detention pond, that's a pretty heavily treed area there. A pretty wide area to that property to the west of us. I mean, we can certainly beef that screening up, but that is pretty dense in there now.
I don't think there's an issue with the west property line, is there?
I thought they indicated east, west, and the southerly berm.
Yeah, I thought so too, actually.
Okay, maybe I misunderstood.
Yes.
I'm sorry, what? I thought it was just Hamlin Road that you were requesting additional screening on.
Well, when you have your line of sight drawings from Hamlin Road, when you cars heading east on Hamlin Road, west of your property, they're going to look, you'll see that western berm, possibly, if not. But show the line of sight, show the existing trees, show the berm is going in, show what screening you're going to have to make sure that you're going to provide that opaque screen so it won't Hamlin Road.
And pictures, I think, of what you're describing, it will be good too, because it just says on the print, existing screening to remain at 50-foot setback. So pictures could go a long way too.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, we're close on this one. It's trying to get those details hammered out.
No worries. It's been a couple of years, a couple more weeks. We'll make it.
Okay.
I appreciate the commission's time tonight.
Okay, thank you. We look forward to seeing you back.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
On to the next item, request for a tree removal permit for the removal and replacement of as many as 51 trees for Auburn Pharmaceuticals. Proposed 65,000 square foot office warehouse facility on 9.6 acres located west of Livernois, south of Avon, zone Rec W Regional Employment Center, parcel number 15-21-276-014. Teresa Bruce, General Development, is the applicant. Good evening, Ms. Bruce.
Hi, this is Bruce Brickman. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. We're here tonight to propose for approval Auburn Pharmaceuticals, a leading pharmaceutical distribution company, a 65,000 square foot building on Rochester Hills Industrial Drive. The project's been approved at all levels by staff, and we've met all zoning, planning, and engineering requirements. And we're here tonight to get approval.
Hey, thank you, Ms. Kapolansky. Staff report, please. Mic on?
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so just to tack onto that, this site is zoned Rec W, office and warehouse, which is what is proposed, are permitted uses in the district. As Mr. Brickman mentioned, the plans are in compliance with the zoning ordinance requirements. The applicant is requesting a waiver to allow for the existing vegetation along the northern property boundary to remain in place of the required buffer. Staff does support that request. One thing that we have recommended in the planning review is the minimization of the use of metal panels on the facade, and maybe some introduction of additional color variation. Again, that's just a recommendation. The elevations do meet the architectural design standards. Existing wetlands on the site will not be impacted, but the applicant is requesting a natural features setback modification that is recommended for approval by our environmental consultant, ASTI. The site is subject to the new tree conservation ordinance, and the applicant has met the required standards for the removal and replacement of 51 trees. Staff and the Planning Commission also received an email earlier today from the Friends of the Clinton River Trail posing several questions regarding the development. Just as a reminder, a connection to the trail is not proposed, and the applicant is maintaining the buffer along the trail. The plans do indicate a gravel access drive for detention basin maintenance between the proposed basins near the trail. This access drive will not connect to the trail, and the required plantings have been provided around those proposed basins. Jason Boughton is available to address any stormwater questions or questions related to those basins in particular. And all staff reviews are recommending approval subject to some minor plan modifications. That is all.
Thank you. Ms. Gentry, email communications?
Well, Ms. Kapelanski mentioned the 2 emails from the Friends of the Clinton River Trail, similar to the ones for the EEI Global.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Rodiger, do we have any public comment?
Nope, I have not heard from anyone in the auditorium, and from our attendee list, I don't see any hands raised or anyone indicating *9, not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners. Mr. Kalsunas.
Thank you, Chairperson Bernabic. Couple questions. I agree with the staff in regards to the colors being a little bit too the same. If I'm looking, and I want to say, I guess, make a comment. You guys presented a actual picture of the building materials. And I think if Ms. Rodiger, if that could be a standard, which would be very nice, because I could actually see with a picture, I guess, what the actual brick mortars and the siding are. But it does match. I guess I do agree with the staff that when you look across the elevation, especially on the east and the west, let me find that picture again. The north and south elevation, where you have, let's say the north, it's dark, then you get brick, and then you get tan and the brick, which is the light tan, which is very close in color. In the south elevation, it's almost, I call it tan washed. Is there a way that we could break up some of the metal features, maybe different paneling colors mixed in or something like that to give it a little more dimension? I don't call it dimension, but just broken up.
Actually, to answer your question, you do have dimension. What you can't see from drawings are that you have 3 different materials. You have masonry that's split face that has a very rough finish to it. Everyone is familiar with split face masonry material. The metal panel on the front of the building is an alucobond panel that is very smooth. And the metal panel that is in the back warehouse area is a kind of a stipple type of panel that you see on all new buildings with the vertical metal panel. So the colorations may be similar, but the actual material finishes are all distinctly different.
Yeah, I might have misspoken when I said dimension. The color being too close to each other.
That's the color that Auburn Pharmaceuticals company colors are, and that's what they chose to have on the building. What we did is use different types of materials with different finishes, again, to break that up by having a very rough finished masonry, a very smooth finished metal panel on the front, and then the stippled panel that ends up being on the back warehouse.
Okay. All right, that's all I have right now. Thank you, Chairperson Bernardic.
Thank you. Mr. Weaver.
Thank you. Question for the applicant. Have they spoken with EEI Global about the proposed infrastructure that they're looking to do, that loop road? Because wouldn't that affect the entrance to this facility coming off of Livernois?
We have no access to Livernois. Our access is through Rochester Hills Industrial Drive to Hamlin Road. Whatever goes on in the future is, whatever EEI Global does or doesn't do is not really of our concern.
Understood. Then question for staff, do we have any concern that once that infrastructure goes in and connects to Rochester Industrial Drive, will that create additional impact on Livernois?
I can chime in if you want, Sarah.
Sure.
So at this point, we don't have any concern with that. So the applicant is correct that their access is off Rochester Industrial Drive. If the EEI Global Campus, when that is eventually developed, there would kind of be this no man's land in between the existing end of the Rochester Industrial Drive right of way and the new section of Rochester Industrial Drive. So whenever the city did connect those two portions of Rochester Industrial Drive, that would provide an additional access point for this building, but it would also provide additional connectivity for the whole Rochester Industrial Drive area and allow for the EEI Global users to exit through and onto Hamlin and avoiding Livernois altogether.
Sure. Okay. That's all I have for now.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Boyer.
Thank you. And it looks like between your building and the Clinton River Trail, you have a lot of tree plantings. So just kind of wanted to be assured that if somebody's on the trail, we wouldn't want them really to see the building. It's much nicer if they're on the trail feeling that they're in the wilderness and not looking at big industrial buildings. So just was kind of trying to get an idea of what that looked like from the trail you're building. Is it densely treed there between your building and the trail?
Actually, if you look at the landscape plan or the tree removal plan, there is a line of trees along the property line that are existing that we are leaving in place. So there's already a tree line that's there. Yeah. And in addition to the tree line that's there, on our side of the property, we are adding a number of trees between the rear parking lot and the property line where the detention basins are at the top of the banks, which is the highest point of the grade there, to add additional trees.
Great. And then you haven't asked for any access to the trail, but would you be interested in your workers being able to use when the EEI Global Development, they're looking to put in an access? Would you think your employees would be interested in accessing the trail through that?
If we have, we can't control what you do with EEI Global. And if you provide, an access or frankly, our property abuts theirs. So if people want to go across our property in that side setback to the east, and there's a trailhead there, they'll use that. But part of the issue here is this is a secured pharmaceutical distribution facility that has to meet FDA standards. So that is why we do not have or want a direct pathway. Aside from there's being a grade problem anyways, there's a significant grade difference on our property. What you do with EEI Global is, what you do with EEI Global.
Great, thank you for clarifying that. I just wanted to make sure you weren't going to be coming and asking for access, so thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gaber.
Thank you. A couple of points to Dr. Boyer's comment. I mean, if I read this correctly, the building is 88 feet from the property line, so that's set back dramatically. Then you've got the trees and then you have the detention basins. So, so you're going to have, quite a bit of coverage between the building and the trail, which should be nice. The other thing, Mr. Brickman, you just mentioned, the comment you just mentioned, is there, maybe I missed this, is there proposed to be a fence around this site?
No.
No? Okay, I just wonder, based on your concerns about security and such, if that was the case. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kalsunas.
Mr. Kaltsunis, you're muted.
Thank you. I was hoping not to do that today. I guess in regards to the straightforwardness of the developments we've had today, this is probably the most straightforward one that we have. So if it pleases the chair, I'd like to start to move the motions in the packet, starting with the tree removal permit.
Yes.
In the matter of city file number 20-003, Auburn Pharmaceuticals, the Planning Commission grants a tree removal permit based on the plans data received by the Planning Department on March 11, 2020, with the following 2 pre-printed findings and 2 pre-printed conditions.
Do I have a second to that motion? Mr. Hooper. Okay, we have a motion to approve a tree removal permit for Auburn Pharmaceuticals. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, we will take a roll call vote.
Kaltsunis,
Yes.
Hooper,
Yes.
Newbauer,
Yes.
Bowyer,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Detloff,
Yeah, I'm saying, okay. It says I was muted by the host here.
oh,
Sorry.
Okay. All right, so yes.
did I get, Bernabic,
Yes. That motion passes unanimously.
Chairperson Bernabic.
Mr. Kalsunas.
I would like to move the motion in the packet for the natural feature setback modification. In the matter of city file number 20-003, Auburn Pharmaceuticals, the Planning Commission grants natural feature setback modifications for 125 linear feet for temporary impacts to construct a stormwater outlet and install tree fencing based on plans dated and received by the Planning and Economic Development Department on March 11, 2020, with the following 2 pre-printed findings and subject to the following 3 pre-printed conditions.
Okay, seconded by Hooper. Okay, I have a motion to approve a natural feature setback modification. Motion by Mr. Kalsunas, seconded by Mr. Hooper. Is there any discussion on the motion? Take a roll call vote, please.
Kaltsunis,
Yes.
Hooper,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Detloff,
Yes.
Bowyer,
Yes.
Gaber,
Yes.
Newbauer,
Yes.
Bernabic.
Yes. That motion passes unanimously.
Chairperson Bernabic.
Mr. Kalsunas.
I would like to move the motion in the packet for the site plan. In the matter of city file number 20-003, Auburn Pharmaceuticals, the Planning Commission approves the site plan based on plans dated and received by the Planning Department on March 11, 2020, with the following 6 pre-printed findings and 2 pre-printed conditions.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Hooper.
One proposed change, that'd be finding number 2. It's not really accurate because it's not going to be accessed from Livernois.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll propose removing that finding.
Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Kalsunas, seconded by Mr. Hooper for approval of the site plan. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing for none, we will take a roll call vote, please.
Kaltsunis,
Yes.
Hooper,
Yes.
Detloff,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Gaber,
Yes.
Bowyer,
Yes.
Newbauer, RB,
Yes.
Bernabic.
Yes, that motion passes unanimously.
Okay.
Congratulations, and moving forward on your project.
Thank you. We look forward to getting that thing built very soon here, and everybody stay safe and healthy.
You too.
Thank you. You too, Bruce.
Thank you all.
Okay, we will move on to any other business. Ms. Rodiger?
Yeah, nothing on my end at this point. Just thank you so far for a smooth virtual meeting. So we talked about, we have a special meeting coming up on May 5th. That'll be our next one. And that will also be a virtual meeting.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Kalsunas, were you gonna move on with motions for elections for?
Yes, if we're at that subject, Chairperson Bernabic, in regards to the new appointments for the next year, I would like to make a motion that the Rochester Hills Planning Commission hereby appoints Deborah Bernabic to serve as the chairperson for a one-year term to expire the first meeting in April 2021.
Thank you, and that's seconded by Mr. Hooper. Okay, we will. Okay, you already read it. So motion for Deborah Bernabic, seconded. Motion by Mr. Kalsunas, seconded by Mr. Hooper. Ms. Bernabic continue to serve as chair. Take a roll call vote.
Kalsunas,
Yes.
Hooper,
Yes.
Boyer,
Yes.
Newbauer,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Detloff,
Yes.
Gaber,
Yes.
Bernabic.
Yes, that motion passes unanimously. Mr. Kalsunas, okay.
If Mr. Hooper would like to agree, I'd like to make a motion that the Rochester Hills Planning Commission hereby appoints Greg Hooper to serve as the vice chairperson for a one-year term to expire the first meeting in April 2021.
The second, okay, Mr. Detloff. Hey, we have a motion by Mr. Kalsunas, seconded by Mr. Detloff to appoint Mr. Hooper to serve as vice chair for a one-year term. Take a roll call vote.
Kalsunas,
Yes.
Detloff,
Yes.
Boyer,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Hooper,
Yes.
Gaber,
Yes.
Newbauer,
Yes.
Bernabic.
Yes, that motion passes unanimously.
So Chairperson, if I want to be secretary, can I motion my own self?
You could, or we could let Mr. Hooper do it for you.
I'll make the motion to appoint Mr. Kalsunas as our secretary for a one-year term.
Second, Mr. Detloff. Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Hooper, seconded by Mr. Detloff, that Mr. Kalsunas serve as secretary for the next one-year term. Take a roll call vote, please.
Hooper,
Yes.
Detloff,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Kalsunas,
Yes.
Gaber,
Yes.
Boyer,
Yes.
Newbauer,
Yes.
Bernabic.
Yes, that motion passes unanimously. And Mr. Kalsunas.
Chairperson Bernabic, I would like to move the motion in regards to the Zoning Board of Appeals and recommend that the Rochester Hills Planning Commission hereby recommends to City Council that Deborah Bernabic shall serve as its representative on the Zoning Board of Appeals for a one-year term to expire March 31st, 2021.
Seconded by Mr. Hooper. Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Kalsunas, seconded by Mr. Hooper, that Deborah Bernabic serves another one-year term as the representative to the Zoning Board of Appeals. We'll take a roll call vote, please.
Kalsunas,
Yes.
Hooper,
Yes.
Newbauer,
Yes.
Bowyer,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Detloff,
Yes.
Gaber,
Yes.
Bernabik.
Yes, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And I'd also like to mention that our next meeting date is May 5th, 2020. Do we have just 2 items so far, Sarah?
Yeah, the only things that we already out the notices for the Rochester University final PUD, which you saw, I think, at your February meeting. With that, there's a companion PUD amendment to the original Rochester University PUD, take off the Pulte property. And I guess depending on how quickly our friends over at Hamlin Outdoor Storage could act, that potentially could get on. And Kristen looks like she has something to add.
We have the Speedway rebuild as well.
Oh.
Okay,
Good.
So we have a couple things. So is there any other business anyone else would like to discuss before we move for adjournment? Mr. Kelsonis?
I guess the discussion about parking in townhouses, and I think we talked about it before. I really like to see minimum 2 parking spots per unit with, and if you say if you have 12, add another 6. Because I think that's what you're going to see as reality. And we are going to be backing ourselves into a corner of the way we currently have our ordinances in regards to parking for townhouses. Looking if anybody else has another recommendation, but yeah, I think we're gonna put some stress on the rest of the city in regards to this development when people start buying extra cars and wanting to park them somewhere.
Yeah. Mr. Gaber, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on that project as well. I still can't believe we have nothing in our ordinances that allows or that prohibits, buildings from being so close together. I mean, essentially, and I'm sure this is going to, as people try to build infill sites and jam as much density on as possible, I'm sure this issue is going to rise again in the future. I think we should have something in our ordinance that deals with this concept. I mean, here we have 2-story glass windows looking across 10 feet, into the back of a building. So, I think we need an ordinance to address that. And also, there was one other zoning ordinance issue. I'm trying to remember the Lombardo subdivision? It was something with lot averaging, I think, some type of minimums. I brought it up at that point in time, Sarah. You said you'd put it in your file to raise it sooner or later when we talk about zoning ordinance amendments.
We have a long list of zoning ordinance amendments that we were looking to do. Just as you can imagine, those are actually supposed to be on our March agenda, then our April agenda. But right now, in a non-essential and essential world, those are things that are not rising to the essential level. The parking topic that you brought up last time, Nick, falls into that same category. I think we might have some differences of opinion, so we might have to call on some, just additional research to see kind of what the trends are with parking in the future. And again, looking at missing middle and, I think, a lot of our mindset has been suburban, 4-bedroom, homes. And when you have these loft style apartments, there may be some different parking needs than what we've seen in the past. So these are all things on our list. Again, it's just a matter of prioritizing right now. If this wasn't going on right now, we would have already have seen some of these zoning ordinance amendments. So, and again, with the FB overlay, I mean, maybe we can talk about Giffords Webster and evaluate those again. The FB district is intended to be compact. It is intended to be walkable. It is intended to have 0 lot lines. I know that's outside a little the comfort zone of how Rochester Hills has historically developed in the past. But we can look at it again. But again, right now we're in the mind frame of what is essential and what can be delayed. And so right now those I think fall under the delayed category.
And would green spaces, more open spaces into these developments make it onto that as well? Because
that's on the list.
Right.
And I think now, since as I'm making my essential trip to the shopping mall to get food in the next couple of days, now since everybody's living at home, I think I'm going to make a couple trips down some of our developments that we have, and if I remember to take some pictures because everybody's home. So you're actually going to see what kind of stress you're putting on these parking lots right now. So I'll try to remember to do that. And if anybody else can for properties around them, maybe you could just send them out to Sarah and drop it in a PowerPoint or something.
Yeah, but remember, Nick, everyone's home, but nobody's having guests and parties and that type of thing. That changes the calculus.
That's true too. Yeah, your first party. The single guy has their first party, invites all their friends over.
We'll use the dentist office next door.
Greg, do you have something to say?
Right. And in today's world, people that go to parties, they Uber and Lyft.
Yeah, Nick, I think you have a good point. I think it's worth looking at it, but in this day and age, I think it's going to become a case by case basis. I agree that site was just jammed with building, but just the way that those lofts were situated with one bedroom and just one bedroom in a loft style above a kitchen, I find it hard to believe that the person who would be looking at that would need more than one car. Okay. I think they're targeting, a biker and somebody who's going to live and work right there. But to your point, though, I think a development that would have more bedrooms or more of a traditional style layout, I think you're absolutely right. They would probably need at least 2 spaces.
Hey, what I was saying was, Greg, did you have something to say?
Well, quick things. One, can we either from the Planning Commission or from City Council, Dr. Boyer, for Neil Schroeder, some kind of proclamation for Neil? I don't know if everybody knew the history of Neil, but he was a city engineer here 35 years ago.
I think he said.
I thought he was Troy. Wasn't he a Troy city engineer?
Well, he was here too. Before he was Troy, he was Rochester Hills city engineer. He was the first city engineer for when Avon Township became Rochester Hills. He was a city engineer.
Yeah. Maureen is already working on a proclamation. We just obviously have to wait till we all can get together and sign it and do those types of things. But Maureen has already started work on that.
It's done, actually. It's just, I don't know, it's got to sign it, so.
All right, well, I don't listen, personally, because he hired me 38 years ago. Anyhow, so we kind of go way back, and if everybody could, if you have his phone number, reach out once in a while and give him a call. I give him a call, and he's super lonely, and just we talk for hours on end. Just being what it is. You're locked in your house and you have nowhere to go. And
Greg, are you sure he's the lonely one?
Lonely or his wife's lonely, one or the other. I don't know. But anyhow, just to share that. And also, then I wanted to compliment Sarah and Deb for an excellent run meeting. Being the first time.
Thank you.
Oh yeah.
Good job, you guys.
Very smooth.
Hey, Sarah, are we going to be looking at the CIP too? In the it's the time of year we start talking about that.
Yeah, it will depend on how far this virtual meeting order goes. Right now, the virtual meeting, the Open Meetings Act executive order from the governor goes through May 12th, I believe. And so our CIP is planned, I think, for our May meeting. Normally it goes in April, but the CIP, again, part of the essential, non-essential stuff, everything was kind of pushed back a month. So I think it's scheduled to come on your May
18th, May 19th meeting.
Yeah, May 19th. So right now that's not virtual, but that may change. But as of right now, the May 5th is virtual.
Okay.
All right. Chairperson.
You're all in your homes, but I have a long drive.
Oh, that's right. You have to go home. Right. Mr. Kalsunas.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I have a second for that motion, seconded by Mr. Weaver. So motion by Mr. Kalsunas, seconded by Mr. Weaver to adjourn this meeting. Roll call vote, please.
Kalsunas?
Yes.
Weaver?
Yes.
Bowyer?
Yes.
Newbauer?
Yes.
Detloff?
Yes.
Gaber?
Yes.
Cooper?
Yes.
Ernabic?
Yes, that motion passes unanimously. And have a safe trip home, Mo. And Sarah, you're at work too, huh?
Yep.
Yeah, have a safe trip home tonight.
And Kevin and Dan, who are downstairs making all the logistics happen for us. So
yeah.
But,
well, thank you to them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
Great job.
Thank you.